Good morning to our virtual audience and speakers. A very, very warm welcome to this event, I think invitingly called Towards a Fabulous CAP, in which we put the spotlight on the Interreg Northwest Europe Fabulous Farmers project. Now we have interpretation today in French, German and Dutch, so please make sure that you have selected the language of your choice from the bar at the bottom of the screen so that you can hear all of our wonderful speakers. And of course, so that you can hear and listen to me, your moderator. My name is Katrina Sickle, and I have the immense responsibility of navigating us all through the next 3 hours. It's a very dynamic 3 hours. So when you hear 3 hours, please don't get put off because we have so much going on. We've got videos, we've got polls that I'm going to ask you to take part in, fireside chats. We've got some elevator pitch case studies, policy recommendations, a very punchy panel discussion and more. So it really is quite the party. It's a party in 3 parts. So absolutely, you likely need to work alongside, but do please stay with us. Do stay with us right till the very end. Otherwise you will miss a vital part, genuinely, of this very inspiring story. And also guess what, quite unusually at the end, and you need to stay until the end, we have gift bags to give away. So if you want your gift bag, you really do need to stick with us. Don't miss out. So what's the story? It's a European project, started in 2019, runs until 2023 in 6 countries, involving 12 partners from Northwest Europe. The countries are Belgium, the UK, the Netherlands, France, Luxembourg, and Germany. And it's designed specifically to support farmers in the transition to more agro-ecological practices, not least by encouraging the use of methods and interventions that increase a farm's functional agro-biodiversity, hence FAB, functional agro-biodiversity. There we go, if you were wondering why. The project helps farmers really develop customized approaches, that's very critical, and brings all the requisite axes together. Importantly, of course, it doesn't stop there. This is all about gathering evidence and using that evidence to promote uptake amongst other farmers, but also through regional policy and EU policy. So we're really going to explore that bit too, because the bottom line is this isn't just about benefits to the farming community, but to society at large. And we're going to hear from all sorts of farmers who are going to tell us about their experiences and what benefits they found from this project. The conference is organised by 12 partners in the project, and it's a partner of EU Green Week. So what does that mean? You are welcome to tweet all of your inspiring words of wisdom to the wider community. You can use hashtag EU Green Week, or you can use hashtag Fabulous Farmers. And one other reminder, there is another way that you can make your voice heard throughout from time to time, not just the polls, as I said, and I'll be asking you to take part in those, but through some questions. Here's the deal. Don't put your question in the public chat channel. If you can please put it in the Q&A, that's at the bottom in the Q&A, not the public chat channel. That's very important. Keep them super short, super short, the name to whom it's addressed, and our lovely team behind the scenes, Alexandre Morin specifically, will be curating those so I can pose a few to my speakers. I think that's it. That's all of the housekeeping out of the way. So we are ready to rock and roll. Let's get stuck in. I'm delighted now to ask to join me on screen one of the project partners. His name is Bart Schoukens, and he comes from, well, doesn't come from, he is the manager of Borre Natuur Vlaanderen. This is a Flemish NGO working with farmers on landscape and nature conservation, and it's actually one of the lead partners in the project. So if I could please ask Bart to join me on screen to officially open the event. Hello, so lovely to see you.
Hi, Katrina.
We can hear you. So you have to break the ice. You are in the spotlight. So let me shush and give you the floor. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Katrina, and dear participants. On behalf of the Fabulous Farmers team, I would like to welcome you to this Green Week event towards a fabulous CAP, with a special welcome to Mr. Pierre BASCOU, Director of Sustainability and Income Support Directorate, DG Agriculture and Rural Development, Mr. Humberto DELGADO ROSA, Director Natural Capital of DG for Environment, the members of the European Parliament, Mr. Jérémy DECERLE and Mr. Christophe HANSEN. We are very pleased that we could organize this partner event as part of the EU Green Week. Society has big expectations of agriculture. Agriculture has to tackle climate change and is expected to deliver more and better ecosystem services. The current agricultural system is characterized by a high production, but also by a strong dependency on external inputs, which has negative impacts on the health and quality of our natural resources, such as soil, water, biodiversity. We need to work on widespread adoption of a more circular agro-ecosystem. This system optimizes the reuse of natural resources and is less dependent on exhaustible external inputs, whilst delivering benefits to farmers. Agro-biodiversity being the targeted stimulation of biodiversity to deliver ecosystem services such as pest and disease control, pollination, and soil and water quality. In this project, as said already, partners from 6 countries develop, test, and stimulate the uptake of FAB measures by farmers. And although European policy already offers a number of instruments to deliver FAB measures, we note that there are still important bottlenecks or gaps in the EU regulations to encourage the widespread uptake of FAB measures by farmers. Therefore, we will present to you our policy recommendations to increase the adoption of FAB measures, which we will be able to discuss further during this meeting. I'd like to give special thanks to our French project partner, AC3A, for the organization of this event. And I wish you all a very interesting meeting. Thank you.
And thank you very much to you. And everything that you spoke about there, and you were highlighting some of those different measures, our audience is going to hear about all of those diverse initiatives and all the sorts of things that have been going on in the different countries throughout the course of this event and the policy recommendation. And we're going to hear from policymakers, their responses. How can this fit into the CAP and support the CAP? So all of that, that's why I said, please do stay with us for the whole of this journey. Now, I said it was an event in 3 parts. In part 1, we're going to present the project. So you need to know what it is and some examples, as I said, of those functional agro-biodiversity measures. We're going to present them from 5 countries today. In the second part, we're going to present the European policy paper, the recommendations for the new CAP. So that's something very concrete. Alongside that's come out of this. And in part 3, as I just hinted, I get to chat with some diverse members in the stakeholder ecosystem and ask them exactly how they think the policy recommendations can be integrated into EU policy. Now, what about you? We can't see you, but I can reassure you that we are so very happy that you joined us. Now, I was going to look down to see if I could get the number of participants. I probably haven't got a total. We had more than 300 people registered. Definitely, I think we've got half that number with us, but people registered from around 25 European countries and more. And there's a map visualizing this. Now, you can go into the chat now. I said for questions, it's the Q&A. But you can go into the public chat now because there's a link. Here's a Padlet. This is a map that shows where we all come from, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a researcher, a policymaker at local level, somebody who's representing the EU institutions, even from the media. Would you mind, please, just go on, pinning yourself on the map if you haven't already done so. So let me give you a few seconds to have a fiddle around. Click on the chat at the bottom, have a look in the chat channel for all attendees, click on that link and it takes you directly to that map. And let's just trust that, you weren't drinking too much last night, you've got a clear brain, you do know exactly where you are geographically. So let's have a look. A moment, I will leave that. Here's the map, you can see it on the screen, and the more you pin yourself, the more we see where you are all joining us from. So there we go. So feel free to keep doing that, and we'll see if we can come back and have a look a little bit later in our programme. Now, we're going to dive into part one, and I said we're going to go a bit more in depth into the project and find out more about it. We have a video, so that's what we're going to kick off with. It starts in English, the video, so you will hear interpretation, but we do have a variety of speakers, so you will need to follow the subtitles there in English. So if you can play the video, that would be lovely. Thank you.
It all started here in the municipality of Laakdal, a small village in the rural area of Flanders, de Meerode. After a couple of tough years with extreme weather conditions and failed harvests, a group of farmers decided that they wanted to work together in a project to make their fields more climate-proof. Within this fragmented landscape, they decided that they want to work with functional agro-biodiversity, or FAB. A broad range of measures can be used to work on qualitative fields with less dependence of chemical inputs and higher yields. But if we feel this need in Flanders, probably others feel the need too. And maybe we can learn from them and they can learn from us. We decided to work in the Interreg Northwest Europe program and ended up in 5 countries with 13 different partners with a very diverse expertise, from scientists to farmer unions. And we ended up in 12 pilot regions, a very diverse spectrum. Let's have a look.
Bienvenue au Pays de la Loire. Ici, les agriculteurs cultivent la diversité dans et au-dessus du sol. Nous les accompagnons vers l'agriculture de conservation et la mise en œuvre de ces 3 piliers que sont les rotations diversifiées, une couverture maximale du sol via les couverts végétaux et une réduction du travail du sol.
Welcome to the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. Here in the Ardennes lies the biggest reserve of potable water of our country.
Together with the farmers, we establish new measures in order to preserve the water quality and find new perspectives for the next generation of farmers.
Hello, I'm here in the beautiful southwest of England, and in this target region we're focusing on agroforestry, herbal leys and mixed cropping.
Het Pajotland is een landelijk gebied vlakbij Brussel. Een prachtige streek met glooiende akkers en groene weides. Hier hebben we samen met 10 landbouwers bloemenranden ingezaaid om nuttige insecten aan te trekken.
Bienvenue dans le Morbihan, dans notre belle région de Bretagne. Pour la protéger, les agriculteurs du groupe mettent en place plusieurs mesures FAB, telles que la rotation des cultures, les couverts végétaux, la gestion des haies ou encore la réduction du travail du sol.
Welkom in het Landschapspark de Meerode. Hier werken landbouwers, ondernemers en burgers in en aan een prachtig, prinsheerlijk landschap.
Welcome to the FAB region of FAB Farmers region of Wales, where we're implementing the FAB measures of agroforestry, hedgerow management and herbal leys.
Bonjour, bienvenue en Normandie pour vous parler du projet Fabulous Farmer. Spécifiquement dans ce département de l'Eure, l'agriculture occupe une place importante et a de nombreux défis à relever. Pour l'aider à relever ces défis, nous avons décidé de travailler sur l'arbre au cœur des exploitations agricoles à travers 2 solutions, la haie et l'agroforesterie intraparcellaire.
Welcome to the Netherlands. Welcome in this beautiful area. Within the project Fabulous Farmers we have 2 regions. The beautiful area of Zeeland and the other one of West Brabant. We do a lot of activities like the pilot farms, the study groups, the kitchen table talks, of course the cost, the benefits and the value chain. In that way we make it in totally much more beautiful as it was before.
It wasn't easy to start from scratch. The knowledge of FAB was very fragmented, so the first task was bringing all knowledge from partners and literature together. Secondly, we want to bring the knowledge to the farmers. We do this in general by organizing demonstrations, webinars and masterclasses. But more specific, a farmers network is set up in each pilot region. In these networks, farmers can learn from each other. On top, kitchen table talks are done with farmers with specific questions or to convince adopting farmers. Next step is to visit other pilot regions with the farmers networks. But that's not all. We're convinced that the effects of the measures farmers take at their fields can be increased by measures taken by others next to their fields. Therefore, on one hand, a FAB landscape integration plan is set up with a broad range of stakeholders in the pilot regions. On the other hand, all pilot regions inform citizens on the possibilities and limitations of FAB using a kind of citizen science like these square meter gardens chosen in pilot region Merode. A powerful project with a strong partnership was born.
Thank you so much. Can I just say, I've just seen somebody in the chat say, love this video. I literally smiled throughout that video. That is hands down one of the best videos I have ever seen that absolutely gets to the heart of the project. So heartfelt. And the weather changes, you know, good old windy Wales there. Absolutely brilliant. So clear. And now I'm going to invite somebody on to supplement that with some more information. We have to see if he can do better than that video, because we're going to hear from another of the partners. His name is Felix WÄCKERS. He is Director of R&D at Biobest Group, which specializes in sustainable crop management. And he has been working on functional agro-biodiversity for 3 decades. He holds also a professorship, I love this, in plant-insect interactions. So if you could please join me, Felix, that would be wonderful. I think you're going to be spotlit alongside me. Yes, you are. There you are. That was a great video. I do just pull out, I know you've got a presentation, so I will give you the floor in a moment, but I think it's important to say one of the things that's critical, of course, and it was mentioned there, is this is also all about the next generation of farmers. So that is very, very important. And we know that's very significant in the EU, but perhaps you could expand on what we heard there in the video, and I will listen intently. Thank you very much, Felix.
Okay, thank you, Katrina. I would like to give a little background. The FAB and functional agrobiodiversity has been mentioned several times. I would like to give a little background on what functional agrobiodiversity really consists of and how it is slightly different from just general biodiversity. Functional agrobiodiversity is actually targeted biodiversity management with the aim to support sustainable farming. And so with functional agrobiodiversity, we're looking at interactions between agriculture and biodiversity. And usually it's a negative story where people say agriculture has a negative impact on biodiversity. But in fact, we turn the story around and we look at the positive impact that biodiversity can have on agriculture. And we do so by focusing on ecosystem services provided by biodiversity. And we will show farmers thereby that biodiversity can actually work for farming and for agricultural production. Examples of such biodiversity ecosystem services that farmers rely on is, for instance, pollination, natural pest control, but also nutrient cycling and pathogen control. So within the Interact project Fabulous Farmers, we focus on those organisms that actually provide a range of services that support agricultural production. And we're talking about services in addition to pest control and pollination, soil quality, water quality, erosion control, and climate regulation. And all these services are vital for a productive agricultural system. We have to keep in mind, if we talk about functional agrobiodiversity, that not all biodiversity is FAB. There are elements among plants and or other organisms that are not necessarily welcome on agricultural fields. And we can think of agricultural pests, we can think of weeds, we can think of diseases. And those we would like not to support. And in order to do so, we need to take this targeted approach. So how do we realize services? Traditionally, there is the paradigm that we enhance diversity, and we're talking about a number of organisms. We try to get that number as high as possible, and somehow that higher number then translates into ecosystem services. It has been tested to see if that approach, that simple approach, actually works. And there's a number of meta-analysis studies that have looked at the interactions between diversity and ecosystem services. And a good example is a study by David Endow looking at the impact of botanical diversity, so the diversity of plants, and natural pest control. And he looked at a whole range of studies and showed that the effects are variable. In about half of the studies, you see that if you diversify your agro-ecosystem, you indeed reduce pest population. So that's great. But in a third of the cases, we see there's no effect or the effects are variable. And in 15% of the cases, you actually see an increase in your pest problems if you increase your botanical diversity. So we can see that it's very, that there's a lot of variation in the effects. And this is, of course, very difficult to sell to your stakeholders, to the farmers, because you would have to say, okay, maybe it works, but if you're unlucky, then you will actually get more pest problems. So we need to do better, and we really need to understand what's going on. And understanding what's going on, you can do by looking at the different organisms that supply the ecosystem services. So here, for instance, the ladybird that controls pests, the bumblebee that pollinates the crops, or here the nitrogen-fixing bacteria, or the fungi that control diseases. And we try to understand what are the requirements of these vital organisms and how can we support them, and at the same time not support organisms that are harmful to agricultural production. So rather than taking an approach which is a one-size-fits-all, we actually like to go to a tailor-made approach in the agro ecosystem to support the beneficial organisms. An example to show you that this tailored approach really is necessary, if we've done some studies where we looked at flower mixtures that are targeted towards natural enemies, so the ones providing pest control, and we compared those to flower mixtures that are commercially available for pollinators. And then we looked at which insects would be visiting these flower mixtures. And if you look at the bumblebees, the pollinators, they do visit the pollinator mix, but we don't see the bumblebees back on the biocontrol flowers at all. Vice versa, the parasitic wasps that provide biocontrol, pest control services, we do find them in high numbers in the biocontrol mix, but we don't find these wasps on the bumblebee, on the pollinator mix flowers. And the hoverflies, which are a bit of a pollinator and a bit of a biocontrol agent, we see that they use both groups of flowers. This shows you that if you just randomly select flowers, you may be missing out on vital ecosystem services that these farmers need. So by having this targeted approach where we support beneficial insects or also support soil organisms, we can create a positive spiral where by using the right flowers, we increase biodiversity, but more importantly, we also increase functional biodiversity. And this functional biodiversity then delivers pollination and natural pest control. And especially by controlling the pests, the farmer needs to use fewer pesticide applications, and this reduction in pesticide use, which can be quite dramatic, is a very important secondary factor enhancing biodiversity in general and functional biodiversity. In our large-scale projects that we have run over the years in several European countries, we have shown that the informed use of functional agro-biodiversity on commercial farms increases biodiversity. It can reduce pesticide use by 90%, and that's over a period of more than 10 years. It can increase yields by 10 to 30%. In addition, FAB measures can help improve soil quality and nutrient retention. It reduces erosion and contributes to water quality. So FAB supports productive farming while contributing to key conservation and policy objectives. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to wait for your slides to be removed.
Yeah.
So there we go. So thank you so much. And do you know what, Felix, I really scared you, didn't I? Because I was supposed to play a video first and do the teaser, and then you were going to amplify, and I switched, and I think you were a bit like, you jumped right in. But thank you, because I actually think it helps the audience to hear in more detail and then to have a bit of a recap. So thank you for giving us that there. That's very, very helpful. And now I'm going to ask our lovely technicians behind the screen if they can play that video that distills what Felix has said.
Does agriculture need biodiversity? Declining insect populations, nutrient leaching, erosion. Agriculture is often in the frame as a cause of species extinction in our regions. But the fact is, many of those species developed along with agriculture. We're beginning to understand more and more about the close relationship between agriculture and species diversity. And as you would expect, we have come up with a name for it: agro-biodiversity. Or for those who want to be even more specific, functional agro-biodiversity. Okay, so what's that? Simply put, all sorts of living organisms perform many different services on which we humans depend. Take breathing, for example. Without plants, there is no oxygen. And without oxygen, there'd be no humans. Or soil. Without soil organisms, there would be no rotting of leaves. And try to imagine how a world without decomposers would look like. So biodiversity provides services, and humans depend on many of them. All well and good, you say, but doesn't modern agriculture do everything with machines? Well, not quite. Modern agriculture needs biodiversity too. Take insects, for example. Bees pollinate flowers, and seeds develop from the flowers, which the farmer sells and from which oil is produced. Rapeseed, for example. Other insects, such as ladybirds, protect plants by eating pests. In this case, aphids. This allows the farmer to leave the sprayer in the shed, which is good for nature and good for all of us. Another, less flowery example is manure. The farmer spreads it on the field, and the living organisms in the soil turn it into excellent fertilizer for the plant. All very good. So are we saying that functional agro-biodiversity is all about using other organisms to benefit agriculture? Wait, isn't that exploitation? Well, not quite. It's about the farmer actively and deliberately promoting biodiversity and thereby hoping to reduce costs and increase income. Returning to that flowery insect pollinating example, the farmer cultivates flower strips with specially selected flower species, to which beneficial insects are particularly attracted, as they provide food and protection year-round. In return, the insects pollinate the rape blossom or eat the pests, so it's a win-win. Or another example, the farmer uses machinery to cultivate the soil less deeply and thus sparing the soil organisms. These then help build soil fertility and thus provide better yields for the farmer. Or the farmer grows legumes, peas in this example, which take up nutrients from the air and thus allowing the farmer to reduce fertilizer they need to buy. These tiny little nodules harbor bacteria, providing nitrogen for the plant. So yes, agriculture needs biodiversity, and functional agro-biodiversity actively promotes it.
Thank you. And I think that was a lovely distillation of some of the more detailed explanation that Felix gave. And so important for me there to pull out, biodiversity provides services. And that real link between the humans and plants, the humans and the soils, which we all know is critical, not least because it's a part of the Biodiversity Strategy 2030. And I'll be talking to a gentleman from the Commission about exactly that later on in our event. Now, just to say, ladies and gentlemen, I can see some questions coming into the public chat. If there are things that can be answered quite rapidly by the organisers, you can actually put them in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer those if they're not specific to a speaker along the way. Now, we do have another 2 videos, so you can kind of relax. Very, very colourful way to talk about next the benefits, because we've heard benefits, benefits, benefits. We've had some explanations, but we are going to dive a little bit more deeply into that. So can I ask my lovely technical team behind the scenes to play the next video? Thank you.
FAB measures are related to diverse ecosystem services like pollination, soil quality, pest control, or water quality. Depending on the measure, you have more impact on the one or the other ecosystem service. But the story is not as easy as that. Depending on how the implementation is done or the species that are chosen, the highest impact may switch from one ecosystem service to another. On top, a combination of FAB measures can have more impact than single actions. Within this project, we defined 10 FAB measures, which can be combined as you wish. Crop rotation, mixed crops, field margin management, hedgerow management, agroforestry, modify manure quality, organic matter input, cover crops, non-inversion tillage, and the FAB supporting action, physical and biological crop protection. A farmer can implement, for example, flower strips next to his field. But depending on the species in the border, this will attract different insects. So by choosing this species, he might attract pollinators or predators. But he might as well choose species that attract pests instead of predators. So a well-made choice is important. If this farmer also places hedgerows next to his field, of course with a well-considered choice of species, these can provide habitat during winter to the beneficial insects he attracts with the flower strips. Same way of thinking can be done for cover crops. Depending on the cover crop chosen, the farmer can work on the soil carbon content, limit the leaching of elements, or work on natural pest control. This last one can be reinforced by a crop rotation with a smart choice of crops to break life cycles of possible pests. By using these FAB measures, farmers can create robust fields with less dependence of plant protection products or chemical fertilizers.
And there we have it. Now, before we have a last video, which is really from more farmers themselves, I wonder if Felix is there and could, because we did have a question that's come in from the audience. So I'd love to bring you back if you can. Hello, delightful. So I don't know if you've caught it, but the question from the audience, do you believe that native seeds or plants are necessary in the field edges, or is this not important? That's one question. And then just to clarify, 90% less pesticides in all crops or mainly in cereals?
Yes. The question with regard to the native plant species, that's indeed something which we always focus on. So we like to use native species or species that are widely cultivated already. For instance, buckwheat is not native to many areas, but it is cultivated anyway. So there's not really a risk of using these kind of species in the mix. And the reason why we focus on these native species is indeed to avoid any negative impact on the native wild flora that we like to protect as well, of course. And the second question with regard to the reduction in pesticide use, that was in a project in the Hoekse Waard in the Netherlands, which has run since 2005. And there we have been monitoring the pesticide use in potatoes as well as in cereals. And in both we can see this reduction of 90%.
Thank you very much. And I just want to reiterate for our lovely audience that, of course, you are going to hear so much in this event, but it's in a way just the tip of the iceberg, because I think if you've gathered there already from the videos and from what Felix, you talked about, demos, webinars, masterclasses, we heard all about that also in the first video we saw. So this is the tip of the iceberg. You will be able to get in touch. It's so easy to find out more and critically to spread all these practices and knowledge transfer. That is what we have unequivocally heard thus far. Felix, you've disappeared. And because I'm going to introduce farmers in videos now. So as I said, we're going to pack this with some testimonials because I think that's what counts. And nobody is saying this is a breeze, because we're going to hear also about the challenges. But it's critical, I think, to hear from those on the ground who are applying these measures. So we've got some testimonials now from France and from Belgium. So perhaps we could play that.
Emmanuel Landau, agriculteur à Miré dans le Maine-et-Loire, 49, installé depuis 2013. L'exploitation, donc c'est du porc naisseur engraisseur, mâle non castré et porc sans antibiotiques. 54 hectares de culture en blé, maïs, colza et tournesol. Et puis aussi depuis 1 an maintenant, production d'électricité avec du photovoltaïque. Donc je suis en agriculture de conservation depuis 2 ans maintenant. Parti dans ce système parce qu'on a acheté un semoir en Cuma. Suite à ça, on a eu une formation qui nous a expliqué un peu les basiques. Ça m'a paru intéressant et simple de faisabilité. C'est pour la biodiversité du sol et au-dessus, c'était plutôt intéressant. Et puis moi je trouvais que ça rajoutait aussi pour mes enfants un système plus durable et un peu plus écologique. Le travail du sol, c'est le moins possible. Alors sur les cultures d'hiver, colza et blé, c'est semi-direct, bon résultat, beaucoup plus simple et satisfait. Pour les cultures de printemps, donc, je fais du travail superficiel le plus possible, donc pour plus de 5 cm. Et pour les cultures de printemps, le semi-direct, alors pour moi je trouve ça un peu plus délicat, faut des super couverts. Donc les couverts végétaux sur l'exploitation, c'est systématiquement avant toutes les cultures de printemps, avec un mélange de 5-6 espèces. On essaye de faire des mélanges avec des légumineuses, crucifères, graminées. Moi j'essaie de regarder aussi aux racinaires pour essayer d'avoir que ça fasse la meilleure préparation de sol possible pour ma culture de printemps. Alors mes résultats, depuis que on est passé en AC sur l'exploitation depuis 2 ans, sur l'importance des sols, je pense qu'il y a un intérêt. Sur le ressuyage, je pense qu'aussi ça a son intérêt. Il y a moins de temps à passer, moins de matériel à intervenir, donc économiquement ça marche. Sur le fuel, on est en train de voir que ça a quand même baissé. On a dû prendre 3 000 € de moins là, depuis 2 ans. Sur la biodiversité, je pense qu'il y a, moi l'été d'avoir des sols qui sont ouverts, ou couverts avec des petites fleurs. Je sais qu'il y a 2 ans j'avais fait un super couvert, je trouvais ça génial, il y avait plein d'insectes. C'est agréable à voir. Les perspectives, c'est de continuer déjà d'une. Continuer avec du couvert permanent, là, on a commencé l'année dernière. Le couvert permanent, c'est en gros de semer son couvert une année et de l'avoir grossièrement le plus longtemps possible. C'était un lotier, j'ai semé avec mon colza. On a récolté le colza, ensuite au mois d'octobre l'année d'après, on a semé le blé dedans. Et l'idée, c'est de le garder encore cette année. Deuxième perspective sur l'exploitation, c'est d'arriver à semer les cultures de printemps, donc maïs et tournesol, en semi-direct. L'idée, c'est de maîtriser mieux encore les couverts avant ces cultures-là. Ça permet de faire une bonne préparation de sol, je dirais, naturellement par les racines. Le travail en groupe, je dirais que c'est intéressant parce que ça permet de mettre en commun nos idées. C'est une banque d'idées un peu quelque part. Et pour le coup, de se former des fois avec des intervenants qui peuvent être intéressants. Mes objectifs en tant qu'agriculteur, c'est de m'éclater dans mon boulot déjà d'une, de gagner ma vie, trouver un équilibre entre le travail et la vie de famille, et puis de se lancer, je pense aussi des défis. Alors ils sont un peu divers, mais l'agriculture de conservation, je pense que c'en est un, puisque c'est pas si simple, mais c'en est un.
Door aan een vruchtwisseling te doen kun je heel veel besparen aan sproeistoffen. Als je altijd afwisselt van teelten kun je die onkruiden gemakkelijk bijhouden. Omdat als je andere teelten zet, als op andere periodes dat uitkomt en dan zijn die onkruiden weg en bij de onkruiden die in het voorjaar komen, die zijn weg doordat je granen zet bijvoorbeeld. Onkruiden die in het najaar zijn, die gaan dan ook niet in het voorjaar zien. En dan, ja, dat wisselt elkaar af en dan heb je, als die niet groot worden, ook nooit niet, gaat die zaad uit je grond uit ook. En ook opbrengsten. Door geen monoteelten te zetten, haal je toch je gemiddelde opbrengst redelijk stabiel. Altijd monoteelt als sect. Hè. Je gaat dat zien, als je alle jaren hetzelfde zet, kun je niet die teelten winnen. Procentueel als verschillende jaren achter je niet zetten. Als je die vruchtwisseling doet, moet je altijd zien dat je afzet hebt, dat je het ermee wegraakt. En doe het niet te veel in één keer. En als je iets nieuws probeert, ook niet te veel in één keer. Want ja, je weet niet wat dat gaat worden. Hè. Dan kan dat soms tegenslagen, maar als je dan met klein beetjes begint, dan gaat dat wel. Hè. Ja, en ook een beetje naar de grond zelf zien ook. Hè. Die dat kan verdragen van iets in het najaar goed over te geraken, dan zetten daar tarwe of granen kun je dan zetten. Maar als je nat is, ja, dan moet je dan mee oppassen met granen. Hè. Want je moet het vroeg wel kunnen meststoffen geven. Een heel goede start voor een vruchtwisseling is gerstelen. Dat kun je eigenlijk op alle soorten gronden behoorlijk goed winnen. En dat kun je eigenlijk alle kanten mee uit. Je kunt dat vervoederen en je kunt dat verkopen. Dus daar heb je weinig risico mee. En dat is vroeg van het land, waardoor dat je toch nog een teelt van gras kunt zetten. En daar heb je ook nog altijd iets van. De laatste jaren zijn de najaren heel goed, waardoor dat je in oktober, november nog gemakkelijk eens een goede snee gras kunt afhalen. En dan dat zijn eigenlijk twee win-win situaties. Je hebt iets anders op je grond staan en toch heb je nog eens een nateelt ook. Vanaf dat we met dat klasse 2 en 3 mestniveau zitten, ja, nu wordt dat moeilijk. Hè? Want er zijn percelen waar je maïs zet en dan moet je geen granen meer achter zaaien. Hè? Dan kun je geen vruchtwisseling meer doen. Daar zit het, op een moment raakte je vast met je vruchtwisseling dan, want achter die maïs ben je verplicht van nog een groenbemester te zetten en granen telt er niet voor mee. Ja, en een risico is er altijd, maar dat is aan alles. Hè? Anders is dat geen boer. Hè? En als je niks nieuw probeert, dan blijf je voets doen zoals je bezig bent. Hè.
Thank you. Now let me remind everybody that all of those videos, because they are excellent and there has been a question, where can we access them? They will be available after the event, give it a day or two, on the Fabulous Farmers website. Now, there was a mention there of yields from our second farmer in Belgium. Can I ask Felix to pop back, because we do have a question for you. So you are very much in demand, sir. That's brilliant, isn't it? That's as it should be. So here you go. Have you calculated the costs? I mean, that's an obvious question, which I could have put myself, of the FAB measures. Did you compare the costs for the measures and the loss of yield?
Yes, well, that's something which we try to incorporate in the project that we've done. In the Fabulous Farmers project, it's a critical element of the project. So there will be detailed assessments of both the costs and the benefits, so that we can do a cost-benefit analysis. From previous projects, I can say that the cost will, of course, depend on the crop that you grow, and it will also depend on the country and the area where you are. So it's difficult to give a fixed number for that. But the cost is not as high as people may think, because typically farmers use those areas of the land that are either not very productive or are not very easy to work, and use those elements to put the FAB measures in. And so you're not losing much in terms of productive land. Or it is that farmers already have a grassy margin and they just upgrade those margins by putting other structures in.
Okay. And as I understand, if I've read it right, I think that is something though that you are working on more through the programme at the moment in terms of these calculations. Is that correct? Yeah.
Exactly.
Because all of these projects also are at various stages. I mean, you are at pilot projects and they are at various stages, and you are critically trying to pull together and address all of the issues throughout that contributes, because in the end of the day, you want to spread the word, but part of spreading the words is indeed that cost benefit analysis we heard. Just sticking on that before I lose you, and I'm just keeping you here in case there's anything else, because you keep going backwards and forwards, although I love it. You go, you come back. We heard there from the first farmer in France, you know, he said, I want challenges. And then he said, conservation agriculture is a challenge, but hey, I want challenges. And then our second farmer there in Belgium said, yeah, well, there can be risks, but you know what? All farmers know the risks. So I quite liked hearing that. There's that, you know, sure, I don't know, is that?
Well, it's good that there's progressive farmers that like challenges and like to try new things. And those are the farmers that typically flock to these kind of projects. And it's great to work with them because they are ultimately, they're a critical part of these projects. So we do the projects together with the farmers. When it comes to risk, yes, some farmers are more risk averse than others. And what is important, if we want to really roll this out wider, that we also include the risk averse farmers. And there's of course, by generating examples and having demo farms where they can go and visit and see how it works, you already take some of the concern away. Another thing that development, which is very interesting, is that in some European countries, they have a kind of an insurance system, which farmers can be part of. And when they then stop using pesticides or reduce using pesticides, and should anything go wrong, they get refunded by the insurance. And that's, I think, a very vital additional element. It is not FAB as such, but it helps people go and take this step.
Just on another score, and I'm just keeping my eye on the clock here a little bit and checking whether anything else is coming in before I keep making you jump about. In that, because you are coming back for the panel discussion that we have at the end of our event, and we're going to be there with a couple of MEPs as well. So my feeling from what I've read about this is obviously it's not just this passing from farmer to farmer, the knowledge sharing, the kitchen table talks. It's also about the policy supporting it, isn't it? And there is, you know, that's important as a framework to work within. Farmers can't do it alone within themselves and be the lighthouse farmer to spread the word and the knowledge. Would you agree?
I fully agree. And it's the positive thing is that currently you see that both on the level of policy, on the side of the farming community, and on the side of the supply chain, the supermarkets, the food industry, there is demand for these kind of approaches. And so what we try to do is really bring these groups together, and an event like the event today is a good example of that, so that we can see how can we develop this this knowledge that is out there and really start implementing it on a larger scale. And I think the time is right for this to happen.
I absolutely, and as a just sort of your average member of the public, I do think you're right in the time is right. And I do think it's a critical way for, I remember when I worked on the CAP some years back in 2013 for the Commission, doing some work there in comms, and it was all about bringing the public and the farmers closer together. And I do think that this particular area is an opportunity to do so. I have, oh gosh, a couple more questions for you. We're going to be, well, it's okay. We'll run to a couple of minutes late, but it's important. Do farmers using non-tillage system, do they apply herbicides, or are they that good at the non-tillage system that they've actually succeeded in removing the use of any pesticides?
Well, that's a good question. There again, it really depends on how you approach this. If you work with cover crops, and the last farmer actually mentioned that, you can actually use these cover crops to suppress weeds. And so if you have a non-tillage system and instead you use your cover crop, then that can actually help you in the suppressing your weed problems. Again, it really depends on what kind of cover crop you are using and what kind of system you use. So it's not a blanket answer that you can give, but it means there are possibilities also with FAB to address weed issues.
Okay. And a last one for you, and don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, something crops up. There you go. I've just used that word, crops up. There is no problem. Look, even you a lot. I've made you laugh. Something crops up. You can get in touch with Felix through the project. No problem. Here we go. Concerning the fertilizers, did you test on Did you do tests on bioactive products? With bioactive products.
With the fertilizers, yeah, maybe that's something that somebody else can answer in the Q&A, because I have to admit, being my expertise being in plant insect interactions, that's I'm not maybe the right person to answer that.
Okay, well then great. There's a challenge. If we could please answer that in the Q&A, or perhaps give me that information to put out there later, I can do so. So I will park it there, as I say, for the moment, but you've been tremendous, and that's the value of having you spotlit here to be able to answer the questions that come from our audience. I thank you very much. I promise I'm not going to suddenly invite you back before I officially invite you back for the panel discussion, but and a bit before. You're actually the busiest person in this entire event, I have to say, Felix.
Okay, I'll see.
Yeah, you are. You can really, truly take a break behind the scenes now, because I'm going to ask the audience to work a bit harder, because I'd like them to take part in a poll. And we've got 3. Here we go. Let's see who is here. That's very important. Let's see who is here. I mentioned some of you, policymakers, researchers, but who exactly are you? We're still holding strong. We've got more people than we had at the beginning. So who are you, including those more people? I'm a farmer, work for a farmers organization. I'm an agricultural advisor. I'm a researcher or scientist. 4th one, I'm a project manager. 5th one, I'm a local authority or a policymaker. 6th one, I'm something else. And no, you don't get the chance to write in what that something else is, but you're something else. So you're a farmer, farmers organization is 1, agricultural advisor 2, researcher scientist 3, project manager 4, local authority or policy maker 5, and something else, we're not going to ask what, it's not our business, 6. And let's see what the result of that poll is. If we have, there we go. Mostly researchers, scientists, just under 50%. We've got a good number of project managers, a good showing of farmers, the advisors there, there's something else we don't know, at 13%, okay. And local authorities, we've got a good percentage too, at 11%. But mostly it's the researchers and scientists who are out in force, the project managers and the farmers, or those representing or belonging to farmers organizations. So we have a second poll. Yep, don't think you're getting away with it that easily. We need you to stay with us. There we go. Before this morning, what did you know about FAB farming, functional agro-biodiversity farming? Before this morning, what did you know? So number 1, I knew everything there is to know. Much clearer. Number 3, I knew very little. Number 4, never heard of it. So I hope, I'm being told for some strange reason my internet connection is unstable. I'm just going to cross my fingers. There you go, some knowledge. That's very often how it is. That's very often why people do join events. But I hope that you are as much on the second half of that sentence as the first. I had some knowledge, okay, but now it's much clearer. I hope it is. And then behind that, I know everything there is to know. So some knowledgeable people, almost 20% in the audience. Let's go to the third poll, please. And the third poll, here it comes. If we were not on Zoom, where would you have liked to attend the event? I love Zoom. Second, in France, Monsieur Landau's farm. Oh, well, of course, in the Netherlands to see the flower strips. Finally, in Belgium, and nothing about farming, just the good chocolate. That's quite funny. That's very funny. So there we go. Where would you be? And let's have a look. Oh, look, on Monsieur Landau's farm. That's where everybody wants to be. And then a tie between the Netherlands and Zoom. I'm not going to comment on that. And in Belgium, well, of course, 19%, a very good showing. I would like to be on Monsieur Landau's farm also with some good Belgian chocolate. I think that would be my preferred choice. So there you go. We can remove that. Now, we said, and you've heard it, this project is all about sharing the learnings and the recommendations more widely. That is one of the critical points of it, not least to the policymaking community at the EU and regional level. So I think you need to know what the policy recommendations are. There are 7 main policy recommendations. And so I'm going to ask 5 members of the project to join me all together in order to present those to you in an elevator pitch fashion. So if I can ask now to join me Alexandre Morin. He is from the Association of Chambers of Agriculture of the Atlantic area in France. So he's a project partner. We've also got Liz Bowles. She is a Director for Farming and Land Use at the Soil Association. There we go, you're coming. I don't know how you would like to join them, but as you wish, lovely people backstage. Liz Bowles, Director for Farming and Land Use at the Soil Association. So she's leading the charity's work with farmers and has been in the agri-food sector for over 20 years. Hello, welcome to you, Liz. Thank you for your patience up until this point. We've also got Melanie Klompe. She is responsible for carrying out the activities of the project in the Hoekse Waard pilot region in the Netherlands. She's also a board member of the Farmers Collective there. So you can join me if you can. Hello to you. We've got Felix. Well, we've got Felix again, you see. He's back here, WÄCKERS. He's our plant insect specialist and R&D director at Biobest group. So lovely to see you again. Also, if I may invite Sven de Vreen. He's a bioengineer, a researcher, and he's an advisor and a coordinator for Boreen Natuur Vlaanderen, which is again the umbrella organization working on nature and landscape management in Flanders. So lovely to see you all. I feel I was joking when I was thinking about this, that you're all slightly outside your natural habitats, partly outside your natural habitats. But I'm so glad that you are. Bear with me a moment because I'm hearing the French interpretation. Are you also hearing? Okay, there was a bit of a moment, which is fine because the man has an absolutely delightful voice that should be reading bedtime stories. It's gorgeous. But you're here because all of this is about spreading this more widely and this kind of proof of practice approach to nourish policymaking. So Alexandre, give us a bit of an intro for this. And then, of course, the first recommendation of the 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. So functional agro-biodiversity, as we have heard from the beginning of the conference, refers to the element of biodiversity that provide ecosystem services and as well as sustainable services for the farmer and also for the whole environment of the whole society. So to realize and optimize these ecosystem services, what we need is targeted and focused measures to allow for the FAB benefits to be maximized while minimizing the adverse effects. Within the context of these projects, a lot of farmers have participated in the experiments to host a diversity of FAB measures. And based on this inventory of farmers and the farmers' feedback, key existing barriers have been identified within the projects. And for effective FAB uptake, it is of key importance to address these issues through a series of policy design. So for a first recommendation on the policy paper is to use the CAP as a support for farmers to implement the FAB measures as in both in type of support, 1 year support as well as long-term support. Pillar 1 can be the location where short-term support and short-term commitment can be supported. Pillar 2 is where the long-term commitment can be supported. All the FAB measures can benefit from long-term multiple-year engagements, and as such, they all fit under the CAP Pillar 2 attention. It is also especially true for the FAB measures that include a woody element, such as hedgerows or agroforestry. In this case, higher investments are needed in the first years of the projects, and they highly benefit from multiple-year engagement. On the other hand, 1 year or short-term commitment can also offer farmers the possibility to test some practices at their farm and explore new possibilities. Farmers in the projects have said that they feel more comfortable meeting a long-term commitment if they first have the possibility to see the measures implemented by other farmers or to try it for 1 year at their farm. The sharing of experience helps to convince farmers to implement the FAB measures. In any case, all measures, whether for 1 year or for multiple years, should be financially compensated.
Thank you. I'm scribbling there just so that I also have the details, because we'll be speaking with our policymakers later. So very useful, absolutely. I want to try it out for a year. I want to see other farmers doing it, which is also in response to what we heard there about the challenges and the risks. And as you said clearly there are barriers identified, and we want to find solutions to make this happen more widely. Thank you for that. May I come to Liz next? Liz, hello.
Hello. And it's a real privilege to be here this morning, and I'm presenting the second recommendation from our Fabulous Farmers policy paper. And this second recommendation concerns how farmers can measure their environmental performance and potentially how they may be rewarded for improvements. And what we found through implementing this programme over the last two or 3 years is that the farmers are responding better to incentives and measurements on the basis of outcomes and results, rather than simply requiring specific practices to be adopted. What we found is this approach leads to a much higher level of ownership amongst farmers and engagement. And the reason for that is that they can potentially see how the environmental performance on their farm is changing over time and how it's improving in line with their adoption of FAB practices. Now, in the past, I think we focused on practices rather than outcomes, simply because it was so difficult to actually monitor outcomes and results. But now, with advances, really rapid advances in remote sensing and automatic local monitoring, measuring outcomes is becoming much more possible. So that's really why we're recommending that we look at this going forward. How can we reward and incentivize farmers on the basis of outcomes and results? And in addition to it being a really engaging tool for farmers, this kind of approach also facilitates more collaborative working at landscape scale, with farmers being enabled to work together to deliver the positive environmental outcomes that we all want to see.
That's great, really interesting. Scribbling, absolutely, you know, and in a way, you know, the technology or the R&D and all of that that's going on alongside is also the right thing in order to encourage what you say is, you know, Katrina, we need to move from just the practices, the implementation of certain measures and practices, to the results and the outcomes. And that seems to be much better in terms of incentivizing farmers. That's so interesting. Okay, you're going to come back at the end to deliver the last, but I'm going to move on to Melanie, if I may now, for the third recommendation.
Good morning, Katrina. Hello. Yes, my task is to tell you something about the third recommendation, and that's facilitating a year-round greening on the same square meter land through complementarity. In the current CAP, rules on double funding make it for us as a farmer impossible to apply multiple FAB measures on the same square meters of arable land year round. And as a result of that, a lot of, you could say, FAB potential is lost. I want to sketch one of the scenarios from my own region here in the Hoekswaard in the Netherlands to show you how we can increase that FAB potential if double funding and complementarity of FAB measures is possible. For now, when farmers want to implement an annual biodiversity lane or a field margins on their land in a pillar 2, those square meters are eventually uncovered in the period of October till January, while we all know that we want to avoid bare soil. And therefore a lot of FAB potential is lost. The reason for this is that the same square meters can't be used for instance, sowing in a cover crop in a pillar 1. And therefore a lot of FAB potential is lost. So I would suggest, with the possibility of double funding and make, how do you say, benefit from the additional function of each measure, FAB measure, it will trigger farmers more to implement the FAB measures on their farm and also make such measures more economically feasible.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, so you want to mitigate the loss of the FAB potential and make it all more feasible. Okay, I'll be coming back to you in a bit as well. I'm going to turn to Felix now. If you can give us a concise insight into the 4th recommendation, please.
Yes, the 4th recommendation concerns the important role of independent advisory services as a way to speed up the implementation and the rollout of innovative FAB practices by farmers on the ground. And the reason that we need these advisory services is that the implementation of effective FAB measures requires new knowledge and management approaches that are not necessarily known to all farmers and that farmers are not necessarily familiar with. Of course, there are advisory services already in place, but often these advisory services sell fertilizers and they sell pesticides. So there is a conflict of interest when we would expect those advisory services to tell farmers about ways to reduce these inputs. So if we want to achieve this, we actually will need to revive or further stimulate the independent advisory services, and they can play a vital role in actually achieving this rollout of FAB within Europe.
Thank you. Makes sense. And thank you again for underscoring there. You're saying, look, some of this requires new knowledge and new management approaches, and not everybody is familiar or trained in that. And that's where it needs to be specific and very customized for this as well. So Sven, if I could come to you, please, for your lovely, concise description of number 5, recommendation number 5. Thank you.
Recommendation number 5 is to support farmers to cooperate on FAB. Why? Birds, bees, butterflies and other species do not stop at the border of a single field or farm. The same goes for other elements of functional agro-biodiversity. By cooperating at the landscape level, synergies can be realized between farm initiatives, enhancing the robustness of the agro-ecosystem. Furthermore, farmers can...
You can't, sorry, you can't pump up your volume, or are you on the max already? Just to check, because I don't want to lose... You may have to shout as though you're in an opera house, Sven.
Yeah, okay, I repeat again.
Ah, better, quick, yeah. So you said the absolute necessity of farmers being able to co-create, because things cross boundaries, don't they? They don't sort of stay. So that's where we got to.
Yeah, so by cooperating at the landscape level, synergies can be realized between farm initiatives, enhancing the robustness of the agro-ecosystem. Furthermore, farmers can learn from each other to do better, how to better integrate FAB measures into their farming operations. And several local initiatives in Europe show already that cooperation between farmers on agri-environmental measures is possible and leads to promising results on the ground. So how to support cooperation on FAB? Today, the CAP and its regional implementation is very much tailored to the individual farm level. Support for cooperation exists, but it's mainly focused on production and stimulate, for instance, the establishment of producer organizations. We recommend for the future CAP to extend cooperation support to farmers delivering ecosystem services to society. To do so, we have three specific proposals. First, include groups of farmers as beneficiaries for CAP subsidies. Second, compensate groups of farmers for their organizational costs regarding development of collective plans, exchange activities, group facilitation, monitoring, and so on. And third, allow for bonus payments to encourage spatial coordination of measures at the landscape level. We are convinced that with the appropriate support, cooperation on FAB can flourish and expand across Europe.
Thank you. I was leaning in because I was wanting to catch everything. I trust that the interpreters did, but absolutely, you're saying there are local initiatives already that show this, but the CAP itself is to focus towards the individual, and we need that support in terms of co-creation. It makes sense. We have two more. Melanie, I don't know whether I will ask you to answer what's in the chat. Let's just see, because I'm keeping my eye on the time. But first of all, if I can ask you to deliver the sixth recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Our sixth recommendation is all about promoting FAB measures through a wider European law and policy alongside the CAP alone. FAB measures by farmers require an important change for the new CAP, but it's also very important to recognize that the potential of other European laws and policy in promoting and mainstreaming those FAB measures, including the four following policy themes. The first I want to tell you something about is the climate change, because a lot of FAB measures help to mitigate climate change by carbon sequestration and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reduce soil erosion, and also improve the water retention from soils, which makes soils more resilient to drought and flooding risks. Examples of FAB measures can be using a cover crop, aiming for a covered soil 365 days in a year, and no convertible tillage or tillage. The second one is the biodiversity theme. Environmental laws have now a main focus on nature conservation areas, while agricultural plots can play a very impactful role with adding more biodiversity and create more robustness to those nature areas, and also be a part of a big green-blue network. The third theme I want to say something about is the nitrate issue. In general, FAB measures increase soil organic matter and prevent the loss of organic matter. Examples of these are the use also of cover crops, the use of solid manure or compost, and non-convertible tillage or no-till. While the organic matter is increasing, the need for fertilizers and plant protection products will prevent further leaching of nitrogen. Finally, I want to address the interaction between FAB measures and water issues. By applying FAB measures, the reduction of the amount of chemical fertilizers and plant production products will be able to pollute our groundwater and surface water. And as we explained already in the theme of climate change, FAB measures also will improve water retention of the soils.
Thank you very, very much. And happily for all of us and for you, we do have, as you know, two people from the Commission coming. So in terms of the biodiversity strategy, which is absolutely key and is ambitious, then we'll be able to pose that question and hopefully get an answer and certainly get that message across. It's got to go beyond the CAP into wider policy. Can I just say, Melanie, I love the way you said at the start there, I'm going to tell you about a little bit about climate change. I loved it. It was a kind of a gorgeous understatement for quite a massive thing. It was great. I loved it. Okay, so.
Yeah, I really think that instead of that farmers now are put in the news and in media as you could say the cause of problems.
Cause of.
Yeah, I think we need to change the thought, and we need to place the farmers on a position that they can contribute to the solution of a lot of problems.
Yeah, and be seen to contribute to the solution, which is, I think, is what you're saying. There is some misperception out there. The whole story, the narrative is skewed.
Yeah, the amount of agricultural land is huge in Europe. So if we can make a transition there, I think we can really have an impactful contribution to that.
Thank you. I'm going to just tell you, because I'm going to come back to Liz for the last one, just in the interest of time, there is a question in the chat, but I'm going to let you answer that independently. And I know that the ladies behind the scenes can make sure that we can answer to Justina, because there was a question. But coming back to Liz for the 7th and last recommendation that we're going to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrine. Yeah, and very much this last recommendation of ours is almost an encapsulation of everything that's gone before, really, because it concerns the need for much more research into how best to optimize the implementation of FAB measures, and looking at that both technically and financially. And it's very true to say that to date, very little research has been conducted in these areas. And I think if we take a step back, over the last 30, 40 years, as Europe, indeed as a globe, we've been focusing very much on increasing yield and not looking very much to the sides in terms of some of those unintended consequences that have happened as a result of that focus on yield and productivity. But going forward, as we start to bring into our lenses the impact, as Melanie has very ably mentioned, on climate, biodiversity and all these other things, we need to broaden how we carry out research. And perhaps in the past, research into this area has suffered because there's no ability to sell a product, and there's also no intellectual property coming as a result of the research. But I'm going to talk about the kind of areas that we'd like to see this research being directed into. And the first area is very much on a technical front. We're calling for more research into the development of living labs with multiple stakeholders from across society to drive innovation on the adoption of FAB measures, how best these practices can be optimized for environmental and financial return, how best to optimize them so they can work at landscape scale. And what we found through this program is that supporting farmer-led research through a multi-actor co-creation approach, which Sven spoke about earlier, has been proven to be most effective, with peer-to-peer learning, a really powerful knowledge exchange tool. So it's not hierarchical, it's peer-to-peer.
Okay.
Then the second area for research,
Yep.
which is really, I'll go through it in literally 30 seconds, is the quantification of the costs and benefits to all sectors of society arising from the adoption of FAB practices. Felix has mentioned it, but it's really critical. Farming has, for farmers to adopt FAB practices, they have to be able to see that this is the most sensible way to farm from a financial point of view.
Oh, I thought you had a third. Sorry, then I wouldn't have interrupted you. My apologies. And just to pick up what you said there, and important, you didn't just say cost benefits to farmers, you said cost benefits to society. Very, very critical. Peer-to-peer learning, I absolutely hear you. And living labs.
That's why it's so critical going forward that everybody gets involved with this. It's benefits for all, but farmers are the people who actually have to make the changes on their land.
Thank you so very, very much. Thank you to all of you. We're shortly going, not quite yet, into a break, but not quite yet. But I can release you all because you can have a bit of a breather backstage. Felix, remember, you need a lot of breathing backstage because you're coming back yet again. So that's for you. But we do have a testimonial here from another farmer involved in the project in Luxembourg. So we're going to play that. First of all, come back to me and I'll take you into a break. Thank you so very much.
Guten Morgen, WÄCKERS ist mein Name. Wir sind heute in Lützeburg am Anzuggebiet von unserem Stausee, was am Norden von Lützeburger Land liegt. Wir bewirtschaften hier einen biologisch wirtschaftenden Betrieb seit 2000. Wir haben uns heute entschieden, einen regenerativen Weg zu gehen, für uns Parzellen zu bewirtschaften. Das heißt, wir fördern an sich als Bodenleben, Humusaufbau, was wir probieren zu steuern. Wir probieren als Zwischenfristen nicht umzubrechen, wir probieren die oberflächlich Licht an den Böden anzuschaffen. Das ist an sich nicht mehr, dass wir die wirklich vergröben. Das heißt, so machen wie möglich Böden bewegen, mehr belüften, und am besten Fall sogar die Mikroorganismen direkt an den Böden abbringen, sodass sie können von innen abschaffen. Die Mikroorganismen in dem Moment mit viel Druck gespritzt oder an dem Moment an den Fräsgang mit angespritzt. Das ist Argument für uns hauptsächlich ist bei uns Wasserhaushalt von unseren Böden. Wir haben heute keine Flugsohle, das heißt, wir schaffen heute mit Böden von teilweise 15-20 cm tief. Das heißt, Wasser ist im Moment auch sehr fort und durch den minimalen Angriff an Bödengefühl haben wir an sich den Haushalt können bewahren. Viele von den Betrieben, die sind zum Beispiel hier in unserer Wasserschutzregion, weil wir gerne Wasser proper hätten an eine gesunde Böden. Alternativen, das sind entweder Gruber, Plum oder Fräs. Egal was du kaufst, ob was gewesen du gehst, kannst du die Maschine erzählen, ist Toleranz von den Leuten als du. Von dem Ganzen, wenn man die Produkte muss kaufen, als in relativ hohe Kostenpunkte. Die Bakterien hat alle Menschen daheim als eine Wirtschaftsdünger, als eine Bede an den Pflanzen, die uns hilft. Das heißt, alle Menschen können das selber daheim machen, aber ich fand aber die Technik muss dann auch irgendwie subventioniert gehen. Wir fahren hier relativ kollegial an unserem Gegend. Das heißt, wir probieren noch zu 7, 10 Bauern bis Mai noch die Verfahren noch anzusetzen und zu testen. Als anzusetzen für das Wasser und als Böden. Haupt ist das, als ja mit den sozialen Medien das Coolste von dem Ganzen. Du musst ein Foto im Moment, wenn du am Gang warst und du warst am Gang, den Arbeit zu machen, du kannst im Moment schon mit deinen Kollegen darüber diskutieren. Also wir werden nicht für unseren Betrieb die nächsten Jahre nachprobieren, um mehr spezifisch als Restaurant zu knallen.
That's great, and I can still see that's lovely, ladies and gentlemen, questions. Perhaps keep your questions in the Q&A channel and they will be answered either along the way or afterwards. But I did want to just read out, I have to put my glasses on because I'm squinting, from Claudia Vigant. Wanted to say, Melanie, you speak from my heart. You're putting farmers from being the cause into the role of offering a huge potential to ameliorate climate change consequences. This needs to be communicated to the public. So I just wanted to read out that comment that came in there for you. I also want to just so there you go. I can't exchange with you further, but there you go. Nice to see your smiling face. You're obviously absolutely reflecting what so many people are thinking. So thank you for that. There we heard the farmer talk about social media. That reminds me, get busy on social media. If it's your thing, on Twitter, hashtag EU Green Week, hashtag Fabulous Farmers. Questions into the Q&A because we'll do our best to answer some as we go along. Certainly gather them together so you get your answers afterwards. And don't forget, all videos just in a day or two are going to be available on the platform. You get a 10-minute break to air your brains, but do come back for the third and final part of the journey. Because why? Hey, not just for the great conversation and fabulous people, but also because of the gift bags. You don't want to miss the gift bags. Now I'm checking, I've got 11:25 as a timing. I'll see you all back here at 11:35 on the dot. So take a break and see you very, very shortly. Don't go away for too long, please. Thank you. A very, very warm welcome back to our virtual audience and also to our upcoming speakers. So we've had a very full program so far, but a very personal program. I don't think I've ever moderated an event where I've had so many personalities and people, and certainly not as many farmers, I can tell you, and even in all of the events that I've done previously for DG Agri. And in fact, naming DG Agri, that takes us right into this next part, because we've heard what FAB is, the benefits, the uses, how it's implemented, and we've heard the project's 7 policy recommendations. Well, what's missing? We want to explore ways in which to make EU policy more fabulous, and not least a comment there that came from Melanie, one of our farmers at the end, and a leader of one part of the project in the Netherlands, who says, listen, Katrina, it needs to go beyond the cap. This is really, really critical. So in the first part, I'm going to chat with the Commission, and in the second, I'm going to chew over some of the issues with some additional stakeholders who play an essential role in making EU policy more FAB fabulous. First to the Commission, and our speaker who joins me initially is from DG Environment, where he is Director for Sustainability and Income Support. His name is Pierre BASCOU. He was previously head of unit responsible for agricultural policy analysis and perspectives. And he is a whiz because he received his PhD in agricultural economics from Imperial College London and is an ingénieur in agronomy from Toulouse. So here you are with me, so lovely to have you here. I hope I can engage you in a short conversation, because obviously where we are coming to in this event is how functional agro-biodiversity really can contribute to the new common agricultural policy. Let me say to our audience, remember, burning question for this gentleman, put it in the Q&A and keep it super, super short. So let me ask you very pointedly, you know, why is functional agro-biodiversity so relevant for agriculture as a whole, but obviously also for the common agricultural policy?
Bonjour, and thank you very much, Katrina, for this introduction. Well, just to precise that I'm from DG Agri, not from...
What did I just say? Did I say DG Environment?
From DG Environment, but it doesn't matter.
Well, that's dreadful, because do you know, how
from
weird
the
is
European
that?
Commission.
No, but how weird is that? Because I just said I do a lot for DG Agri, and I'm about to come to that now, and then stuck you in the wrong Directorate General.
No.
Anyway, but hang on. Somebody did say to me in a moderation in an event the other day, we all speak with the same voice, Katrina. So there you go.
Exactly. We are all from the European Commission.
You're all from the European Commission. So tell us why it's so relevant for agriculture. Tell us why it's so important for the common agricultural policy.
Yes. No, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you, and I think to thank the organizers for inviting me, because as you said, I think it has been a very interesting and very lively, and I would say, I think, quite fabulous. I think first part, I think, of the seminar, so I really enjoyed it, and I mean it. So thanks a lot for that. So directly to your question, why I think functional agri-biodiversity is relevant and important for agriculture, but more generally, I think for the common agricultural policy, I would like to mention, I think, 3 elements. I think the first one, and it has already been mentioned by Felix, I think, earlier in this seminar, is that agriculture is largely dependent on ecosystem services provided by this functional agro-biodiversity. It referred, I think, to insect pollination, natural pest control, soil quality, nutrient cycling, etc. They are all very important for agriculture and in supporting sustainable agricultural production. The second element, and it was already explicited, is that agriculture is one of the many factors that has led to the decline in biodiversity, not only in the FAB, in the functional agro-biodiversity, but in the general biodiversity, and mainly through unsustainable intensification, specialization of farming practices, and also in other parts of the EU, due also to abandonment in agricultural production. And I would say, and the third reason why FAB and the FAB measures are so important for us and for the CAP is that at policy level, the European Commission is promoting a new growth model, which is sustainable, which wants to be sustainable, climate neutral, resilient, but also competitive. This has been announced in the European Green Deal in December 2019. It has also been translated for agriculture and the food system in the related strategies, biodiversity strategy on one side, but also the farm to fork strategy. So the FAB and these agricultural practices that will support the functional agro-biodiversity, such as agroecology, agroforestry, crop rotation, etc., will be really key in achieving, I think, this transition towards sustainability for agriculture, but also sustainability for the whole food system. And if I'm not incorrect, Melanie was mentioning that we needed to look at a more holistic view about agriculture, and this is very important. It's also through, I think, our consumption pattern that we will achieve, I think, this sustainability, because clearly farmers in the future will need to produce more, but with less chemical pesticide, less fertilizers, less antimicrobials, etc., and they will have to produce better. And for this, and this will, I will directly refer to the CAP, for this they will benefit from a specific and increased level of support, I think, from the CAP, because agriculture is also, and I would like to underline that, is also part of the solution to maintain and to restore and develop ecosystem services. And in our view, it's a good illustration that biodiversity protection, whether functional or not, and production activities are not contradictory.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And there you said, you know, this is key. So it's right there at the heart of the European Green Deal, farm to fork strategy, key to a sustainable transition. So the obvious thing to say, therefore, how can the CAP better promote the contribution of functional agro-biodiversity and support its measures? And just while, let me just pop in something that we heard there again in the policy recommendations, that, you know, I think that the farmers, a lot of it is about co-creation. You're going to get more uptake with co-creation, and it's just going to work better when it's implemented with co-creation. And we're a bit concerned that the CAP doesn't really promote that. So perhaps you can squeeze that in as well in your answer.
Okay, yes, yeah, no, you are fully right. And I think what was mentioned before is absolutely fundamental. I have to say that currently we have a policy instrument that we are supporting called the European Innovation Partnership, and that aims, you know, at disseminating, I think, knowledge and new techniques, be it, you know, agronomic, veterinary, etc., management techniques, and we are supporting all these co-creation, you know, pattern, you know, among farmers, so that something that works, you know, in one part of the EU can be disseminated, I think, to the other farmers. But more generally, I think for the future CAP, clearly, I think we need to improve, I think, the biodiversity performance of the policy. And again, when I talk about biodiversity, I cover both the functional one and the more general, you know, biodiversity. And of course, we need to improve, I think, the manner by which we support farmers, I think, in the transition towards, I think, these more sustainable agricultural practices. And for this, the Commission has put a proposal on the table more than 3 years ago. It's a long co-decision process. In June 2018, the Commission put forward a proposal for the future design of the Common Agricultural Policy, and that aims at improving the sustainability and the biodiversity performance, and that rely on 3 key actions that I would like to clarify. So first one is that we have proposed to introduce a new system of granting support, I think, to the farming community, and we call it the new delivery model, which is based more on performance, so paying for an output than paying, I think, for farmers for the compliance to some specific requirement, which is based also on the strategic planning, and this is absolutely fundamental, because we need to be able to support farmers, I think, to do the right thing for the right purpose. And we also want to offer much more subsidiarity, because when we talk about co-creation, we talk about, you know, creating specific, you know, practices and having access to specific support adapted to local condition. And for this, we need to give more room for maneuver, more flexibilities to the member states to adapt the common, you know, policy framework, I think, to the needs in the future, and also a new system, a new delivery mechanism, which is much more coherent with what exists in terms of environmental legislation, climate legislation, energy legislation, etc. So something that which will make, I think, the future system, the future CAP, much more effective and much more efficient. The second action that we have proposed is what we call in our jargon a reinforced, you know, toolbox, because there are different financial incentives that already exist in the CAP. In the future, we would like to improve, I think, this toolbox, I think, available for farmers. And there, you know, I would like to mention first that we are going to, we have proposed, and hopefully, I think we will obtain an agreement about that in the next few days. We we have proposed a new set of standards that farmers will have to respect in order to have access to public support under the CAP. And for that, we have integrated the current obligation under the greening part, so related to crop rotation, related to on-farm biodiversity, related to the protection of permanent grassland. And also we have added some new elements in this mandatory standard that relate most notably to protection of peatland and wetland, which is also extremely important for biodiversity. The second element in this toolbox that I would like to refer, and which is absolutely fundamental, is we have proposed a new policy tool called EcoScheme, which is meant to be really in the future a game changer in the support, I think, to farmers and in the uptake of farmers of this financial support to engage and achieve, I think, this transition towards, sustainable farming systems. And of course, this EcoScheme, and I can come back later on this policy instrument, will be complementary and well articulated with the already existing, existing instrument in the second pillar. And there, I would like to underline, because this was mentioned, I think, by if I'm not mistaken, by the French colleague, EcoSchemes are part of direct payment, which represent an annual payment, but they can cover, and we encourage that also, they can cover long-term commitment by farmers. So this shouldn't be mistaken. So last element that I would like to mention is the specific role of research and innovation. This has been mentioned in one of the recommendations. This is absolutely fundamental, but we continue to invest in research in agriculture and in the food sector, and the Commission has proposed, and it has been accepted, to double, I think, the size of the research budget. I think for research and innovation, we need to invest more. We need to improve the access, I think, of this of the product of the research. I think the access to this new knowledge which has been created, and this for three reasons. Because first, for biodiversity, we need to improve the way we measure and we monitor biodiversity at farm level. Because so far, I think this monitoring is to some extent, I think, is not optimal. Second element is that we need to improve also the analysis and the understanding of the causality link between what we observe in terms of biodiversity and the farming practice or the production system which are in place. Because I think we can rely, I think, on research by scientists, but this is important to have, a better understanding, at each region, and when I talk about region, I talk about, homogeneous, pedoclimatic areas. We need to better understand this link between agricultural practices and production systems and the biodiversity. And the last element on research that I want to mention is that we need to be in a better position to accompany, to support farmer in this transition to sustainability and in this change of practice. And we heard, I think, from Flemish farmers, from these French farmers, Luxembourgish farmers, I think but I think they're all willing to take risk, to take, to address these new challenges. But for this, they need to be accompanied, they need to be supported by advisors, by researchers, by public administration, etc., etc. So this is absolutely fundamental. And this three element, research, innovation, the new policy toolbox, and the new system of granting public support, I think will be absolutely fundamental in the future to really convert, I think, what is already taking place at farm level, but I think to convert that, I think, for all the 10 million farmers, I think, which are currently working in the EU.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, and just while I have you here, just for another 6 minutes, there is a question that has come in, but I just want to make sure that I've given you the space to just say what you need to do. So you have these specific recommendations. You heard them, you said, and you've referred to some of them here very, very clearly. I mean, how else do you think, here's all of this effort that's gone in and it's still ongoing. And we heard that there still needs to be an analysis on the cost benefits for farmers, for society. We had a question that came right at the start about that. So it is a work in progress, but how can it take account, the CAP of these specific recommendations? Just 2 or 3 points, and you are welcome to speak, and so can I, a little bit slower, because we will probably explode the heads of the interpreters. Voila.
Okay.
They'll have my guts for garters.
Okay, I'm not sorry. I'm French, and I'm French from the south of France, so we tend to speak very fast. So I will try to slow down. I will try to slow down. No,
just only a little.
Okay, only a little, but I prefer to speak in English than in French, so that I want to give you the pleasure to listen to the voice of this French interpreter. Maybe 2 or 3 elements that I would like to mention, and I took some notes, I think, on the first part. On the financing element, it's clear that, as I said, with the reinforced toolbox and the implementation of the eco schemes, we are going to provide, I think, farmers with more instruments, much more flexible instruments, and also instruments that can be articulated together between the first pillar and the second pillar, between short-term commitment and long-term commitment, to refer to one of the issues regarding the risk of double funding. In the future, this risk, I think, will disappear, because double funding is clearly, we want to avoid financing with public money the same requirement on the same parcel, but clearly in the future on the same parcel, there will be the possibility for farmers to be supported through both the first and the second pillar. So from both, I think, from the eco scheme and from the agri-environmental measures, for instance, or cooperation measures. But this, and this is very important to underline, this choice will be given to the member state. This will be the member states that will design in the future, I think, the strategic plan. As I said, we have a new delivery model. We set, I think, the main objective, the key policy instruments, the budget allocation, but all this will have to be translated by the member states. All these policy decisions, all these choices between measures, etc., what need to be supported or not, this will be done by the member states, approved by the Commission, but the member state will see on the ground at local level what makes sense, what is best, I think, for the environment, for the economic development, for both, very often. I think it is in synergy. So there will be the possibility much more than what we currently have.
So that's the subsidiarity element you referred to as well previously. Yes, you said the flexibility to the member states.
Yes, and this is very important, because it will demultiply and offer great leverage, I think, in terms of having access to financial support for farmers and having access to financial support for measures which are relevant for them. Because we need to learn, I think, about the lesson of what we have now, the greening, which is an approach which is close to a one-size-fits-all approach, and where we saw that, I think, it was not optimal, I think, in terms of delivering in terms of performance, but also in terms of delivering for the farmer. So I think this would be very important. And in this context, I think there will be also the possibility to support result-based approach. So not only supporting farmers for specific requirement, but also in terms of supporting farmers for the outcome. For the improvement of biodiversity, improvement of water quality, improvement of soil quality, etc., etc. One element which is fundamental and on which I would like to stress, I think, is the need, I think, for what we called, and this is in our legal proposal, impartial and independent access to impartial and independent advisory services. This, I mentioned that before, this is absolutely
so this is partly when Felix was talking about the vital role of the advisory services, and because all of these approaches are not known widely, and they need to be specifically customized. So
because frankly, we know a lot. We have a lot of knowledge, not only about new technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., but also in terms of agronomy, in terms of animal husbandry, etc. But we need to disseminate that. And for this, we need advisors. We need to be able to finance the training of advisors. And so that, I think, the farming community can benefit from all that. And the independent nature of this advisory service is absolutely fundamental. And this has been proposed by the Commission, and this will be most likely implemented, I think, from 2023 onwards. On the co-creation, this is also very important. This is already possible under this European Innovation Partnership. We want to further develop, I think, this possibility, not only for farmers to cooperate and co-create, I would say, management techniques to optimize, I think, their economic development, but also to have access to this cooperation to also reach and address, I think, some environmental and climate objectives. It will be very important. If we talk about biodiversity, there's no point in planting a few trees or an edge in the middle of nowhere. It is important to have a landscape approach to do that, I think, on a landscape scale. So this is important that farmers get together to build these projects that can make sense at more global level, but to which each individual can contribute. This is already possible currently, but this is only used by one member state, Netherlands, to name it. But in the future, we want to boost, I think, this possibility so that farmers, which are part of the solution, get together and also make proposal, I think, for having access to this support,
Okay.
and make proposal that goes into the sustainability objective.
Okay, I'm going to park it there because we have a couple of questions now with the blessing, and you're welcome, the ladies behind the screen. Originally, I said, oh, half an hour for each commission person is going to be so long, but actually we need a bit more time than the time that I thought. So ladies and gentlemen, we've still got our number of participants who started. Don't go away. I promise you that we will close at just after 1 o'clock in time for a lovely Friday lunch and some sunshine, but don't go away. Don't speak too fast, Pierre, just very concisely, if I might ask,
okay,
in answer to 2 questions. Now, I was actually going to come back on the eco schemes, and you said yourself, but for are eco schemes truly a source for additional income for farmers, or do you just take the money away from the basic income support and afterwards offer it to farmers depending on additional requirements that are addressed by the eco schemes? Just try and keep it not too fast.
Okay.
And top lines.
Sorry. Okay. Eco scheme is a new policy instrument that will be financed from the envelope allocated to direct payment. And for a certain percentage, now this is being discussed at political level, 20, 25%, 30%. The eco scheme is meant to provide financial support to farmers to undertake certain types of practices, like the one that you have mentioned, these FAB measures, crop rotation, agroforestry, agroecological practices, green cover, etc. And so if farmers already do them, they can receive, I think, this support without having to change practice. If farmers don't already undertake this practice, they will be paid, I think, for changing practice or changing production system. So this eco scheme will be a way of rewarding farmers to undertake these practices beneficial for environment and climate. So there's a kind of income support element, but also there's a part covering the cost incurred and the income foregone, which may be linked to this change or the maintenance of certain practice.
Thank you. Let me just come directly to something that you mentioned right at the outset of your intervention, abandonment. You talked about that as really quite a significant problem. Any stats on that? Is it getting worse? Is it leveling? Any particular countries or regions? Just again, a top line answer, if I may ask. So give us a little bit more meat on the bones then of that issue.
I do not have precise figures, I think, to provide with. What I want to underline is that every year in the EU, we lose between 0.3 or 0.5% of agricultural land. We don't lose them because of land abandonment exclusively. There's with development of industrial sites, I think cities, with urban sprawl, etc., etc. But in some parts, I think, of the EU, I would say, I think, the less productive part, I think we see a phenomenon of land abandonment, and which can cause problems in terms of biodiversity protection, problem forest fire, etc., etc. So this is an issue, I think, that we are aiming also to address through the future CAP. But I do not have, I think, a specific figures. I think a number of thousands of hectares. I think I would say to make this, I think, a bit more concrete. But I think the overall level of land lost for agriculture every year, it's in the margin of 0.3, 0.5% on an annual basis, which is a real issue, I think, for the food security objective, I think, of the EU, because we are 460 million at 27 million, consumers. So, and we do consume a lot. So this is food security is a real issue that I think that we need to address through different production system and different production methods, which are more sustainable and that will hopefully become more climate neutral in the future.
Thank you. That made me a bit sad there to hear the 460 million rather than more 500, because we don't have the UK anymore. So
I will not comment.
No, don't comment. I already am. Listen, don't comment. No. Oh God, that's opening a whole Pandora's box. No, we kind of don't have time, but I'm going to ask one more, but that means, ladies and gentlemen, and I am saying to our audience again, please bear with me if we go a bit over 1 o'clock, but I think it's important to get your questions answered. So Pierre, again, I've got to ask you, if I may, for a concise answer. It's coming back to this eco scheme, because as you know, stakeholders did make feedbacks on the practice proposals that the Commission made to the member states. So are you going to propose new practices regarding those ideas that came from the stakeholders? You have to approve the strategic national plans and the eco schemes with it, after all, and the definition of the NSPs isn't over. So could you make a little comment on that?
Yeah, just one comment. I think this, as I said, the eco scheme is a new policy instrument, and given, I think, the degree of uncertainty that public authorities have, but also various stakeholders, including producers, at the beginning of this year, beginning of 2021, the Commission published an indicative list, and I would like to underline the word indicative list of practices that could be supported, I think, by eco schemes. So they refer to agronomic cropping practice, they refer to new types of farming system, a new type of environment certification, etc. But this list is clearly, and I would like to stress that, is an indicative list. It's a list of examples. So just to give ideas, I think, to member states, but clearly it's a list of generic elements that we need to be more tailored, at local level, because when we say crop rotation, what does it mean? It's something different in Maine-et-Loire than in Luxembourg or in the Netherlands or in Wales, etc. So this will need to be adapted at local level, and this will need to be adapted to the needs. Not all, I would say, farmers, I think, or soil or water quality or biodiversity have the same needs. And so all these practices that will have to be defined by the member states, maybe they will refer to this indicative list, but we do not intend to update it, because now I would say the Commission has provided example. This is for the member state now to translate that in operational terms and to make some decision together with stakeholders, producers, NGOs, local stakeholders, etc. And the Commission will validate. And when I say will validate, we will make sure that what is being proposed for financial support by the member states makes sense and is really adapted to the local situation, and it can really deliver based, I think, on the needs which have been identified on the ground. So we do not intend to update, to make a long story short.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that. And absolutely, but that is always, when, no matter what, that's also the beauty of the challenge, but the beauty of Europe is the commonalities and the specificities regionally across the board, no matter what kind of topic or sector that we are looking at. I would love to keep you longer, I can't, but I do want to put to you just the coordinator from the coalition Living Earth in Poland, Justyna Zwalinska. We observe the need to raise as much as possible different types of payments connected with green services to be able to truly convince farmers to use green practices and to be engaged in the process of change. So I think it's important, because we can't see the audience, to nevertheless give them the possibility to feedback to you, because I know the Commission is also always in listening mode. So voila. Thank you very much, Pierre. I need to invite your colleague now to complement what you've said. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being with me. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we will go over a little bit over 1 o'clock, but you've got to stay for the giveaway bags, and then you get to have a lunch in the sunshine. Hey, it's Friday. You haven't got much more of your week. And also go into the chat, look at the link for the Padlet. We'd really like you to continue pinning where you are. It gives us the best possible overview of who is joining us today. So we have our colleague from DG Environment. So let me get that right this time. He is the Director of Natural Capital. His name is Humberto DELGADO ROSA. And he previously served many other positions, but he did serve as Secretary of State for the Environment of the Portuguese government between 2005 and 2011. And it's so lovely to see you. And you and I know that I am actually seeing you 2 days running, but with different sorts of hats on, a little bit different hats on. First of all, now I only have 15 minutes with you. I know that's tricky. So if I do a bit of this, forgive me. Anything particular first that resonated for you? And I'm particularly talking because we're looking at, you know, how the project and its recommendations can contribute also to the EU biodiversity strategy. We heard there from Pierre, yeah, CAP, we need to improve the biodiversity performance in the CAP, the sustainability performance. So was there anything that resonated first in what your colleague said in particular?
Oh, there was a lot that resonated in everything I've heard and in the FAB project indeed, because, well, just to set the record straight, we do face a dramatic situation of nature and biodiversity worldwide, which is a twin problem to climate change. It's a very clear from science. And we also know that the main drivers of loss, the first of one is land use change, and also sea use change, by the way. And this decline is especially severe in agriculture areas, including in Europe, which brings a bit of a contradiction, because indeed, healthy ecosystems are the basis for a functioning and productive agriculture. We don't have machines to do the water, the air, the soil, or indeed the food. It's nature tamed by humans that actually does it. And also healthy ecosystems protect against climate change. So if this crisis is not tackled, guess who will suffer more in the end? Well, the first ones is the farmers themselves, from soil degradation, pollinators disappearance, etc. And if things get better and these services, these functional agro-biodiversity services that nature provides, serve first and foremost the farmers. So everything under discussion in this event relates indeed to biodiversity, to the biodiversity strategy and what it can entail. The biodiversity strategy, you said it, is quite ambitious because that's what's needed. That's what's needed to use nature on the path of recovery to 2030. And some of its specific targets do address directly agro-biodiversity, or if you want, farming. You know about it, reducing the use and risk of pesticides, reducing the loss of nutrients, increasing organic farming, increasing the structural diversity in agriculture land by requiring this 10% of agricultural land to consist of high diversity landscape features that were very much lost. So if these actions come in, they not only reduce the impacts of the agriculture sector on biodiversity, they also bring back these ecosystem services that functional biodiversity deliver. In a way, functional biodiversity link nicely nature and productivity. It's a form to say we do have nature-based solutions out there ready to come to apply also to farming. So this is, in a nutshell, what came to my mind in general. Back to you, Katrina.
And when you say there, you know, it serves farmers, FAB serves farmers, we also had at the end of, just before the break, you know, there was a comment going in saying, yes, you know, it was so nice to hear one of the project partners sort of saying that farmers are also there to mitigate climate change, but perhaps there isn't a wide enough understanding that they are seen as, you know, contributing to it. So do you think that from that consumer point of view, making the link with all of that, protecting nature, I think consumers know about sort of the food side of it, but the nature side and what farmers, or do you think there needs to be more awareness amongst, you know, the likes of me and about that so critical part of a farmer's life and livelihood and their work?
Well, I would say that probably, let's say, the public opinion landscape versus farming has been changing. For long, farming is cherished by Europeans in the sense that it provides food of quality, food security, but also in the minds of several, it also provided for healthy landscapes, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Areas we like to see. Why has this changed? Well, because it's not the problem, it's not agriculture. It's certain agricultural practices actually reduce nature, reduce pollination, reduce habitats, and can degrade the landscape. And this is something that Europeans don't want. What Europeans want? They want healthy food, and they do equate healthy food to natural food, whatever that means for them, and to nice landscapes. So in this sense that I find this debate, including on the common agriculture policy, very important, because the CAP's money, which is a big chunk of EU funds, is taxpayers' money to begin with. It's not farmers' money. It begins by being taxpayers' money, and it should go to where societal expectations are. And societal expectations, of course, food and fiber production in good quality, sustainably, but more climate, more biodiversity. So when we bring in this kind of project like the FAB project, it's an excellent example of when researchers and farmers work together, the solutions are out there. Farmers know a lot about how to manage their land, also in a favorable way for nature. And I would say that the measures, probably all, they contribute to several of the targets I've referred for agricultural biodiversity and often beyond. To give some examples, when managing an hedgerow, you contribute to a higher share of high-value landscape features. You can also help reduce pesticides because there's enhanced natural pest control and weed control. You can be stimulating pollination. The same applies to field margin management. If you bring in diverse structural elements, such as flowering strips, you can reduce fertilizers and pesticides because you have some ecosystem services providing for that, and so forth. So I think the knowledge is there both from science and farmers, and bringing this together in a transition to sustainable agriculture based on agroecology is pretty much the answer I would expect.
Okay, I have two more questions for some really concise answers, and I want to come to something, but the obvious first one is, okay, so you said absolutely, you know, FAB serves farmers. This is a part of it. This is, you know, part of what the ambitious biodiversity strategy aims to achieve. So there's some specific recommendations there. Can they be integrated into policy on specifically when we're looking at biodiversity, and how can those measures be supported and picked up more widely? And I just need a few points on both, if I may ask, please.
Very quickly, I do think that all the policy recommendations have a clear link with biodiversity policy and can, and to a certain extent, already are taken on board. For instance, if you think of using the CAP as an instrument to stimulate farmers to go towards agroecology, as Pierre BASCOU said it, we do have these new, for instance, this new instrument, the eco schemes, which will offer a major stream of funding to sustainable practices, including agroforestry, agroecology, creating landscape features, and so forth. So, of course, we need to count on the member states for this also, but it's an avenue that is there. Or when you refer to promoting independent advisory services, well, they're also funded under the CAP, and indeed, they should have a stronger focus also on biodiversity measures. An emphasis on the role of agriculture in promoting biodiversity. That's all we are aiming, well, I would say with the Green Deal as such, and specifically on biodiversity also. And on research, also Pierre referred to it, but indeed the Horizon Europe program will include long-term strategic research agenda for biodiversity, and also covering how can biodiversity be used for agriculture and vice versa. So yes, I think the recommendations are fit for purpose.
Okay. Am I allowed to close it, or did I not give you a chance to give all of the information that you needed to? And I'm only doing this in the interest, and there is no, I now feel I've done that bad protocol thing that I've given your colleague more time, but in the interests of keeping our audience with us. Is there anything you didn't get to say, Humberto?
No, you know, everything was said also because the Commission does speak with one voice, and I endorse everything that Pierre said before me, so I'm just complimenting. That's absolutely nice.
Okay, thank you so very much, and for your clarity there, and I like that. If anybody is tweeting, and they should be, I think what you said there, look, from the Commission, FAB serves farmers. So I think that's, if that's all right, that's a very nice quote that we could attribute to you. So I thank you very, very much for your time, and thank you, we were a bit late coming to you, for your understanding. You can take a breather backstage now.
Thank you.
I'm going to get our audience a little bit busy. I'm not going to do 3 polls. I'm just going to do 1. It's just to give you a bit of a break. This panel discussion that's coming up after the poll, hold the poll a second, is it's going to be short and sharp, ladies and gentlemen. Those 4 brilliant speakers know that it's going to be brain box bingo. Perfect. Here we go. How could these recommendations help improve uptake of FAB measures in your region? How could these recommendations, those 7 that you heard, help improve the uptake in your particular region of FAB measures? Is it funding? Should the FAB measures be included in both pillars of the new CAP? Is it enhanced support for cooperation between farmers? So all of that knowledge exchange, all of that peer-to-peer learning. Should it promote FAB through wider EU laws and policies? We heard that there from Melanie. Could these recommendations improve uptake if they stimulate additional research on FAB? That's the 4th option, the research. Several or all of the above. So if you think, hey, come on, it's all of it, it's there. And if you really don't have an opinion or don't know, you can happily press don't know. How can these recommendations help specifically to uptake FAB measures in your region? Funding, both pillars of the CAP, boosting cooperation between farmers, knowledge sharing, promoting through wider EU laws and policies, stimulating the research. We heard there about an enhanced research budget. We heard from Liz the importance of all of this research. It's critical, the technical side as well. Several, all of the above, or I don't know. So let's just give you a moment and I will let the lovely ladies behind the scenes refresh that poll when they feel they have enough information that has come in. So let's just take a heartbeat. There we go. Well, I think I would have been fallen off my chair if it hadn't have been several or all of the above. And I'm not entirely surprised that what's come out in front after that is the funding. That is critical. But of course, that cooperation between farmers, it has come up time and time again at our event thus far. We've heard it from all sorts of stakeholders in the ecosystem. So there we go. That's also very critical. Now, I won't run the other 2 polls just yet because I'd like to hear from our last speakers who've been very patient, and I want to prevail upon the audience energy while you still have it before you have lunch. So we might come back to the polls. I'll give you a warning there to our lovely technical team. So let's hear, we've heard, you know, the perspective there from the Commission. We're going to hear some more thoughts now from farmers, from researchers, the farmer, the researcher, and also the MEP perspective. So again, you can put questions in the Q&A, keep them super short. What do we want to talk about? Well, we just kind of want to hammer home this take up of the FAB measures. So what is needed, what is expected from the new CAP, how the CAP can support these needs. So I hope that these good speakers have listened to what has come before from the Commission and they can kind of refer to that in their conversation. I don't know, do we have a screen with the names? We might not. If we don't, I can ask everybody to come and join me. So if I don't see one, that was my bad. I'll know that we don't have one. So in that case, I will ask you all to come and join me. There we go. We do. We absolutely do have that screen. I remembered we had that screen. It hadn't been there. I thought, oh, maybe they decided that it wasn't useful. So Jérémy DECERLE, he's an MEP, Agriculture and Rural Development from Renew. He is also the Shadow Rapporteur for the new CAP, a member of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, and a farmer. So keep that slide there a moment. We also have Christophe HANSEN. So he's an MEP from EPP. And he's a member and substitute member of many committees, including on environment, public health and food safety. You see that there. We have Joris BAECKE, who is an arable farmer in the southwest of the Netherlands, and he's former president of the European Council of Young Farmers. He's vice chairman in the Working Party on Phytosanitary Questions for Copa Cogeca, who, as you all know, represents multiple farmer organisations at regional, national and EU level, and he does hold key positions in other organisations, not least the National Farmers Organisation of the Netherlands. And our hardest working speaker today is, of course, Felix WÄCKERS. He is practitioner and researcher in plant-insect interactions and conservation biological control. So we can lose the screen and we can actually see all of my lovely speakers. Here we have Joris, we have Felix, who else do we have? We have Jérémy, and do we have Christophe? Let's have a look. No? Okay, we're not sure if the camera is being activated, so no worries, no stress there. A reminder to our audience that they can ask questions. Welcome to all of you. So all of the participants, why don't I start with you, please, Jérémy? I think that would be a nice place to start. How can the CAP contribute specifically to achieving this balance between the economic and the environmental objectives in EU agriculture? A delightfully concise Morse code length response. Thank you. You need, perfect. And just one moment, I beg your pardon. They may wish to bring Christophe to the screen because I can see he's there. I beg your pardon, Jérémy. There we are, Christophe. You are there. Fantastic. Okay, off you go, Jérémy.
Bonjour à tous, merci. Je voudrais commencer par saluer l'ensemble des participants et puis peut-être plus particulièrement mon collègue Christophe HANSEN, que je salue, et puis aussi Joris BAECKE, que j'ai eu la chance et l'honneur et aussi voilà, le bonheur aussi de travailler avec lui chez les jeunes agriculteurs quand j'étais moi-même président des jeunes agriculteurs. Alors pour répondre à votre question, je pense que c'est justement la politique agricole commune qui doit permettre de maintenir ou de garder ou de trouver ce bon équilibre entre nos ambitions environnementales et les réalités économiques du secteur agricole. À la base, la politique agricole commune est une politique économique. Mais depuis longtemps maintenant, on a intégré à cette politique des objectifs environnementaux. Ça a été dit par plusieurs intervenants tout au long de la matinée. Il y a eu une volonté au fur et à mesure des années de d'intégrer la dimension environnementale dans la PAC pour que les agriculteurs soient aussi accompagnés pour participer à cette transition et cet enjeu majeur. Je pense que là où nous devons travailler, c'est ce qui est fait avec les éco-schemes, c'est à modifier un peu le processus. On avait l'habitude dans les PAC précédentes à travailler plutôt sur la contrainte via la conditionnalité des aides, en demandant finalement aux agriculteurs des 4 coins de l'Europe de respecter une réglementation qui malheureusement n'était pas toujours efficace parce qu'on n'était pas justement basé sur des résultats et sur des réalités de terrain. Donc la prochaine politique agricole commune, grâce aux éco-schemes, doit nous permettre justement d'avoir une approche, et c'est ce que proposent les éco-schemes, une approche un peu plus incitative, un peu plus qui amène une récompense finalement et une reconnaissance au travail des agricultrices et des agriculteurs. C'est comme ça que nous réussirons à trouver le bon équilibre. Il y a un enjeu aussi qui me paraît assez majeur dans la prochaine politique agricole commune. Il faut qu'on puisse aussi mettre à côté de ces dimensions environnementales les questions autour de la création de valeur ajoutée, les questions autour de la protection des agriculteurs face aux aléas climatiques. Ça, c'est des choses sur lesquelles la PAC ne va encore pas assez loin. Et je pense que sur les questions aussi de concurrence internationale et de règles dans le commerce international, l'agriculture et l'alimentation devraient être traitées d'une manière un peu différente qu'elle ne l'est aujourd'hui. Et il y a une chose, et je pense que là-dessus, Joris n'a pas perdu non plus son dynamisme sur la question. Je pense que la question des jeunes agriculteurs et du renouvellement des générations est une question majeure, parce que pour répondre à tous les enjeux et tous les objectifs que nous nous fixons, la plus grande richesse que nous avons et que nous devons plus perdre, c'est celle des hommes et des femmes. Donc il faut qu'on puisse demain renouveler aussi ce parterre d'agricultrices et d'agriculteurs européens. Voilà ce que je voulais dire en introduction. Merci.
Thank you very, very much. And so we heard from Pierre BASCOU talking about the eco schemes as a game changer. You're saying, you know, this is a different way of going about things. It's more results based. You also very much put the focus on the young there and how there has been this evolution in the CAP from the economic to the environmental. Let me turn to Christophe, if I may, a fellow MEP, and say what resonated for you there. What would you like to add? How does that CAP achieve that balance between the economic and the environmental objectives?
Yes, thank you very, very much. First of all, as well, for inviting me as the rapporteur in the ENVI committee in the European Parliament. As you know, we are on many points where there is shared competences between the agriculture and the environment committee. So I'm responsible of as well having these points in the reform strengthened. So I think Jérémy already said it. We are here in a kind of paradigm shift, because we usually had to conform only to rules, and if you don't conform, you don't get the money. Now, at least the part when it comes to the eco schemes will be goal orientated. So you have to achieve a concrete target in order to get this additional money. That's what we say, additional money, but in principle there is not more funds available, as you all know. So, but to get this top up, you need to as well achieve goals. And I think it is very important as well that this is something what is as well possible to adapt to the different member states, because member states and regions, because we know that it is very, especially in bigger countries, you have a very heterogenic field reality. In Luxembourg, maybe it's a small member state, you could have it for one region, but in France or Italy or Germany, this simply doesn't make sense. So I think it is a good point that with this national views and that you can take into account what is really needed and can be brought or best achieved at national level, and therefore I think this is very beneficial. But some people of course criticize that we take away the C, so the common of the agriculture policy. I don't agree to that, because we have, of course, as well the so-called GAECKS, which the farmers have to comply with in order to get their payment under the first pillar. So there are as well many points where we believe this is going strongly into the right direction as well, to have common conditions for our farmers. For example, when we are talking about the GAECK 4 on the buffer stripes along rivers and water, I think that is something people you don't like it everywhere, because as well there we have differences in the regions. So that's why we have a certain flexibility for member states with a lot of irrigation system, for example. But I think it is important, because water, of course, is where biodiversity happens as well. If there are plant protection products or fertilizers in abundant masses going into that water, that of course is very, very dangerous for biodiversity of water. I think we have, this is just to give you one example, but as well we have GAECK 7, where we avoid bare soil in the winter, which is very important for soil protection to prevent erosion. So there are a lot of elements where there will be the same conditions for all European farmers wherever they are in the European Union. And then just to come back for the eco schemes, we know where this is coming from as well. We have to have the alignment or the coherence with the Green Deal. I think that is something very important to say. Why wasn't it foreseen in the initial proposal? Well, because this was already done before this legislation, so before the new commission with Ursula von der Leyen entered into mandate, and there had to be under the Green Deal certain adaptations to be made, and that's why we believe as well for the eco schemes we will probably need a learning phase. We have to still negotiate with the Council of how long this learning period should be, but I think this is important as well to take up then the objectives of the Green Deal when there will be the legal points, the legal text be decided. So that's why there will be probably, we have still to negotiate, as I say, that we have something in 2025 where we will take up these points. So it won't be too long, so I give you back the floor. And
okay, yes, and gentlemen, I've got to just ask you, because it's 12:30 and I can see the audience dropping a bit. We really, it's got to be short and concise. Forgive me for being so pressured, but I so much want to keep the audience with us. Can we hear something different perhaps from Joris? I mean, maybe don't speak again of the eco schemes, but just refer, but anything that you didn't hear yet in terms of how the CAP can contribute to achieving this very important balance?
Well, thank you, Catherine, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. But I do want to underline that it's important when we look at the CAP that we don't forget to acknowledge that the CAP payments still play an important role in farmers' income. And especially also what Jérémy mentioned, young farmers and farmers staying motivated to be in the sector, to enter the sector. We speak about food security as an importance. We speak about biodiversity loss and to mitigate that. We talk about climate change, but we can't do all that if there is not a profitable farming income. In the Netherlands, we say, and I try to translate, you can't be green if your farm produces red figures. And this is, I think, which should be always on top of mind when we look at measures. That's second. That's first. Second, we have to set up realistic targets in close collaboration with farmers. Realistic targets for greening, and decide them, set them up in close collaboration with farmers and not from the high towers from Brussels. And third, we should also accept that the demands for agri-environmental services by farmers should be compensated in a realistic way. And I hope that we can always search for measures which can be a win-win, both to the economy of the farm and to agri-environment. So try to find always a combination, and measures included in FAB, like adding organic matter, choosing a better quality of manure, less tillage, different tillage, crop rotations. All these measures, they might be done by a part of farming community, but we gain the most, I think, while we try to expand the number of farmers that implement them. Absolutely. And to focus on that, and maybe less to focus on measures which are more cost inefficient to the farming sector, because income will have to be on top of mind if we really want to shift the transition towards more greening in agriculture.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hold that thought, Felix, because you're both talking and you echoed there just on the young farmer perspective, because a question did come in. Either Jérémy, you can do an answer, or Joris. Do you think that payments for young farmers should be associated with that obligation to get into agriculture in accordance with, you know, the environment and climate protection objectives? Should there be that link, that association? I don't know who would like to. Joris, do you want to start?
Well, I think entering the sector is the biggest challenge already. Yeah. So looking at that specific situation, the high demand for finance and to smoothen the process to enter the sector, I think it's a tough challenge on its own. Yeah. But I think it's actually positive if you have young farmers entering the sector, also for the greening targets we have. Young farmers, fresh out of education, in close relation to society, they know what is asked from farmers nowadays, and so even having those young people enter the sector will be automatically a game changer. So we always have to try to focus on that.
Jérémy, anything, Jérémy, you wanted to add to that?
En deux mots, juste dire que la génération de futurs agriculteurs a forcément dans les gènes déjà cette approche environnementale, donc ça ne sert à rien de les obliger à être ou à devenir plus environnementalistes. Ils le sont directement et de toute façon, on espère en tout cas tous que ces jeunes pourront bénéficier de l'accompagnement de la politique agricole commune. Et l'accompagnement de la politique agricole commune est de fait en phase avec les enjeux environnementaux. Donc pas d'obligation.
Thank you. So Felix, it's quite nice to come to you. I think it's quite nice to be last because you get to hear what everybody says and you can complement that with something that wasn't said. So what's your perspective on this, achieving this delicate balance between the economic and the environmental?
Yeah, I think the question is already interesting, and the fact that we view this as a balance, and often it is a balance between environment and productive farming. But it doesn't need to be a balance. You can have, and Joris already pointed it out, and that's what this whole meeting is about today. With FAB, we are looking at synergies between things that work both in terms of supporting agriculture and in being good for the environment. And if we focus on these elements within the CAP and make those the measures that receive support, then we will also generate buy-in from the side of the farmers, because the farmers will see that their concerns are being listened to as well. And I think that's why FAB is such a powerful approach, because it brings the environment side and the farming side together, and we can pull on the same strings. And I think that is important if we want to achieve these goals that we're talking about. Then the other thing that I heard within the eco schemes is that they're going to be more result-based, and I think that's an important step as well, that we really can say, well, these are the results that we ideally would like to achieve, results that also work for the farmers again. What I would like there to see that we also look at the quality of the measures that are being supported. Yeah. Yeah. It's not just the measures, but what level of measure or what quality, and if you engage more as a farmer, that you also can get higher subsidies as a result. And a good example, I think, is what was mentioned, the crop rotation, which currently is being discussed as crop rotation being defined as a change of crop at least once a year. Well, that is a very minimal level of crop rotation, and the benefits both to the farmer and to the environment are limited if you do it this way. But if you have a crop rotation which goes much further, where you have a crop rotation of 2 or 3 years, which is the traditional type of crop rotation, then you could imagine that a farmer there would achieve or would qualify for higher payments as the farmers that go for the bare minimum. And I think there's on different levels examples thinkable where we introduce the quality aspect in the payments as well.
Thank you. I'm going, and again, I'm not wishing to just to harness your thoughts. I'm going to come to Christophe, if I may, and just sort of move it on. So from what we've heard and the recommendations, the important thing obviously that we need to know is how the CAP can really be a catalyst for the farmers to adopt the measures. Do they need to receive particular support? You know, how what needs to be done there, because this is all about more wide dissemination. Christophe.
Yes, thank you very much. So I think here, to be very brief, I think the most important to notice is that this is going to happen under the eco schemes, and for the eco schemes, of course, it is really the member states who are responsible to develop them and to present them. So I would strongly urge the national organizations with their proposals to get to see the member states and get things right there, and because this will be the way forward to get these good ideas important. Then secondly, the farm advisory services, which shall cover economic, but as well environmental and the social dimensions. I think these services must be as well notably considered. So these 2 points are for me very relevant to get the FAB up and running.
Thank you very much. And Jérémy, the same question to you. I mean, here we talked about, you know, the member states really need to be a part of this with eco schemes, and a learning phase is very likely needed, and the importance of advisory services. What do you say? How can the CAP be a real driver for farmers to pick up and implement these FAB measures?
Je crois comme Christophe que effectivement les éco-schemes et leur efficacité et la période d'apprentissage doivent vraiment nous permettre d'emmener les agriculteurs sur la bonne voie et de répondre aux enjeux. Les éco-schemes, c'est le premier pilier de la PAC. Dans le second pilier de la PAC, il y a aussi, à mon avis, un nombre important de mesures qui peuvent contribuer aussi à ce changement. Et je pense qu'il faut qu'on imagine aussi des mesures de transition qui réussit à lier à la fois les enjeux économiques, sociaux et aussi bien sûr environnementaux sur les exploitations. Et ça, donc je pense qu'on doit aussi s'attacher à ce que dans le deuxième pilier de la PAC, là où justement les États membres ont un peu plus de latitude, on puisse proposer des dispositifs qui soient les plus adaptés possibles pour répondre aux enjeux et du coup être en phase avec les mesures FAB.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me ask Joris for your point of view.
Well, short answer would be that we include measures in the eco scheme which are relatively easy to implement in conventional farming systems. And that is to have the way to spread it throughout the area of agriculture amongst all farmers as quickly as possible. And then building on that, like shifting towards maybe somewhat more challenging measures. So I would suggest to make the start of the eco schemes with measures that are to be implemented in conventional farming systems.
Thank you. And I'm seeing some questions come in, which is why I'm listening to you. And I just, while I'm with you, I mean, Joris, then I will come to Felix, and then I have a question which perhaps, you know, the MEPs might also want to have a look at it, because it's, you know, the connection with EU cohesion policy. So if you want to glance into the chat, you're welcome, Christophe and Jérémy. We had a comment here from, gosh, thanks to everyone for such an interesting event. There's still a long way to go, despite subsidies, to use the FAB and earn money, you know, with it, but we will go. So what would you say to Judith, who put that comment in, or Felix or Joris? What would you say?
Well, it's a learning curve, I would say, and I'm experienced on my own farm that you try a lot, and some things work, some things you have to forget. And doing this on farm level, but even more importantly, to do it with peer-to-peer learning, to exchange this. And every area, every soil type, climate conditions, every year is different. It has an effect on the success of FAB measures in your farming system. But I'm convinced that these measures, they strengthen the farm, sustainability, environment, and also the farming income, but it's a learning curve which keeps on going.
Thank you very much. So that ties back to what we heard from our farmers in France and Belgium earlier. We heard about challenges, but I like challenges, risk, but we know about risk. So you're kind of responding also within that context. It's a learning curve. Felix, to you, please, for this question about, you know, the CAB as a catalyst. Just a couple of points, if I might ask you, maybe even something new we haven't heard.
Yeah. Well, just also to get back to the question in the chat, that's indeed the great thing about CAP is that what I've been saying before, that this is something where we can go together. It's not that we stand against each other, but we do it jointly, and we can benefit all from it. So that's great to be working on a win-win. And when it comes to the CAP and the financing, I think it's we've been talking about the payments for the farmers, which is of course important. Where also I again like to reiterate that we should have. It's good to have easy, basic eco schemes where people can start, but we should also have ambitious eco schemes where the innovative farmers, pioneering farmers who already are further ahead can go, and other farmers can actually experience this from their peers. And I also would like to see that there's support, financial support going towards the supportive structures. And the advisory system is one example of a supportive structure. But there's also demonstration farms, which are very important for this kind of thing. We should make sure that these demonstration farms are present and in every area so that farmers can see it for themselves. And when we are talking about peer-to-peer learning, where farmers often, some farmers really engage a lot of their time and effort in these kind of things, it would be good if those farmers would could get some kind of financial valuation for the work that they put into this as well. So these are all examples of these supporting structures and that we need in order to make this a reality.
Thank you. So I'm seeing just small declining numbers in the audience. I think they're getting hungry. So I'm going to shortly bring this, just one, and I think it's a very important question. So feel free, who would like to answer, perhaps our MEPs. This project is funded by Interreg, so really European territorial cooperation. So it's within this context of EU cohesion policy. So surely it is useful to address these questions also in that context of regional development and cohesion amongst the different European regions. Any thoughts on that from Christophe or Jérémy, or nobody, or you're all too hungry? Yes, Felix?
Well, I can say a bit about this because a part of the project is that we actually exchange experiences. The last year this had to be done electronically, but the idea was that actually farmers would be able to also move across borders and talk to their peers and their colleagues in other countries and see what's happening there, so that we have this active exchange within the wider region.
Okay, thank you. Before I close this, any last sentence that you didn't get to say, that you will go away and be very cross with the moderator because there's something you need to give as an audience takeaway? Christophe, Jérémy, yep, Christophe, there you go. You see, there's always one, and so there should be. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. No, I had raised my hand before when we are talking young farmers.
Oh, sorry.
So just to just be clear, I think farmers, when they start, they need really the money and to use it best where they to start everything. And therefore, I think it's important that this is possible in the first pillar under the form of a lump sum where there is no additional condition, I think, attached to getting this funding. This is very important. And then secondly, there are other funding measures as well for young farmers under the second pillar. If this is done anyhow, I believe that young farmers are usually better educated, or at least their knowledge is the most recent one. So they will anyhow invest their money in the most sustainable manner. So that's why I believe there should be no additional strings being attached to that, and let the people work who know best about it. And that, I think, it is general. We always in the parliament have sometimes a critical fight, and Jérémy knows very well about that. There are those who are thinking that the easiest would just be to not produce massively anymore in the European Union. but there would be then, of course, the problem that we would fall under a dependency of imports where we don't have any more control on quality. And then finally, I think the consumer would be the worst off with that situation. That's why it's very important to work hand in hand with the farmers community to really get things done on the field, because for me the farmer is the solution and not the source of the problem, and I think we have to better defend this in the outside world.
Thank you. Actually, I think that's a really nice no, I was about to end on it. Jérémy wants to say one more word. The farm is the solution, not part of the problem. We heard about the necessity of making that shift with the average consumer. Go on, Jérémy, last word to you.
Non, mais ce sera très court, mais c'est pour aller dans le sens de Christophe. Effectivement, on doit encourager la jeunesse agricole et les futurs porteurs de projets, mais on doit bien sûr aussi, pour avancer, reconnaître un peu plus ce que les agricultrices et les agriculteurs européens d'aujourd'hui apportent, ont apporté et apporteront encore demain. Et ça, je pense que dans toutes les stratégies qui sont aujourd'hui en discussion au niveau européen, que ce soit la PAC en ce moment, que ce soit le Green Deal, la stratégie biodiversité ou encore la stratégie Farm to Fork, il faut en premier lieu, au-delà de se fixer des objectifs de résultats où on va contraindre encore des secteurs d'activité, il faut en premier lieu reconnaître le travail qui a déjà été fait. C'est notre meilleure façon d'encourager, de motiver et de dynamiser le développement des exploitations agricoles pour qu'elles soient encore meilleures demain. Donc tout ce qui nous permettra au travers de la PAC, des autres politiques, à faire ceci, nous devons en tenir compte.
Thank you. I was going to do, so there you go. Plus de carotte et moins de bâton. No, I deliberately was more carrot, less stick. There you go. And the interpreters will kill me for sticking in that rubbish French there. So may I really thank you so much. It's super interesting. Can I say you had the hardest slot before lunch, but the majority of the audience are still with us. We've barely had a drop. So kudos to you, Jérémy, Christophe, Joris, Felix. Thank you very, very much for your brilliant insights at the end there. We needed it to complete our journey. So you can take a breather backstage and have some lunch shortly. So ladies and gentlemen, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground. We filled your Friday morning with an inordinate amount of rich content. I think we need some instantaneous feedback from you, if I might ask it, and then I will come to our very, very last speaker to do a lovely roundup for you and send you on your merry way. Well, I'll close the event after it, but send you on your merry way. But feedback from you in a word cloud. Could I ask you that? We'd like to know, well, one word that springs to mind for you listening to this event, hearing all this information today. If you can click on the link, which is in the chat channel, not in the Q&A, in the chat, there's a link there. It will take you directly to Slido. You can write one word in your language to describe this event, or maybe the thing that most stuck out for you. What do you take away if you had to go and communicate with somebody? So voila, there we go. Oh, we saw some quite exciting stuff behind the scenes there. So do let us know what you think. And if you haven't done the Padlet, you need to find that and let us know where you come from. Now, that's about what you think. What about the president of project partner AC3A? Where is that gentleman? Luc Servant. You are a very critical project partner. I know you're ready. And oh, look, first of all, sorry, you have been shifted out of place by the word cloud because we can see the results now. Hang on a minute. Hang on, Luc, I will come to you. Look at that. Fabulous. Okay. Inspirational. Very interesting. Practical relevance. Leersam, duurzaamheid. Natuurlijk WÄCKERS. Look at me not pronouncing those very, very well. I'm very sorry. Co-creation, ondersteuning. Win-win. Indeed. Superbulent. Interactively interesting. Oh, look at that clever one. Interactively interesting with caps for Interreg. Oh, that's nice. Thank you to whoever complimented me. I'm very grateful. especially for virtual events. They're tough ones, positive waves, winds of change, refreshing. That's lovely. Great videos. I absolutely concur with whoever put great videos. They are great videos, truly. Right, Luc Servant has to follow that. That's not really very fair, is it? Can you come and join me, Luc? There you are. So you are allowed to give some inspiring words in French, I hope, before I will wrap up our journey. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Bien, écoutez, merci. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. J'espère que vous m'entendez bien. Écoutez, je crois que la richesse des échanges de ce matin s'est traduite dans la richesse du nuage de mots qui vient de paraître. Et donc, pour nous, pour l'Association des chambres d'agriculture de l'arc atlantique, la C3A, c'est vraiment un plaisir, en tout cas, d'avoir vu cette matinée, le déroulement, la richesse des échanges et des apports. Et je crois que ça a clairement montré que c'était une préoccupation forte aujourd'hui du monde agricole et de l'ensemble des acteurs et des partenaires, qui était la biodiversité dans le monde agricole. Je crois que clairement ce matin, et je partage les propos de mes collègues à l'instant de Joris et de Jérémy, des collègues agriculteurs, parce que je suis aussi un agriculteur dans l'ouest de la France. Je crois qu'il y a vraiment une prise en compte aujourd'hui ou un intérêt fort du monde agricole pour ces enjeux de biodiversité. Je crois qu'on a compris que les enjeux étaient partagés, croisés, qu'il fallait de la biodiversité pour l'agriculture et qu'il fallait de l'agriculture pour la biodiversité. Et je crois que tout ça a été clairement mis en avant ce matin. Et que les attentes du monde agricole, ce n'est pas toujours effectivement des aides ou des moyens, c'est aussi d'être accompagné, de voir comment on peut sur nos fermes développer cette biodiversité, être accompagné sur un plan technique, alors sur un plan financier aussi, il faut aussi un peu de moyens, mais je crois que c'est plutôt être dans une démarche volontaire et ne pas toujours voir des mesures qui imposent, qui obligent, qui interdisent. Nous, on est tout à fait prêts localement avec des collègues à mettre en place ces mesures pour aller dans ce sens-là. Donc, je crois que tout ça a clairement été évoqué ce matin dans un contexte aussi de discussion de la nouvelle politique agricole, de la PAC, et de voir quels instruments peuvent être mis en place. Et c'est effectivement le débat de la table ronde qui a eu lieu pour accompagner l'agriculture. Donc, écoutez, moi, je remercie en tout cas pour terminer, sans être trop long, l'ensemble des intervenants qui ont participé ce matin, qui nous ont apporté beaucoup d'informations, qui nous ont éclairci sur ce dossier de la biodiversité fonctionnelle. Je vous remercie, vous, Madame Sichel, pour tout le travail qui a été fait, effectivement, pour avoir pu mener l'ensemble de ces débats. Beaucoup de participants ce matin, près de 200 qui ont participé, puisque nous avons beaucoup de partenaires autour de ce projet, effectivement, et je remercie Monsieur Choukens qui a introduit le colloque en tant qu'organisateur ou partenaire principal du projet Fabulous, donc qui est effectivement un projet avec un intérêt fort aujourd'hui, et je crois que l'Europe montre qu'elle accompagne aussi les agriculteurs là-dessus, dans ce projet Interreg. Donc je crois que tout ça va dans le bon sens, beaucoup d'échanges d'expériences, beaucoup d'expériences à mettre en valeur. Je crois que c'est vraiment l'objet de ce projet, et nous sommes très heureux à la C3A de pouvoir l'accompagner et d'en être partenaire. Merci vraiment à tous pour cette matinée, et puis on espère que tout ça va continuer à s'enrichir dans la poursuite du projet, que le monde agricole est très attentif à tout ça. Merci bien.
Thank you so much, and for your positive enthusiasm to carry us through to the end. And I would agree, from what I have learned, and I've learned a lot, is that when we look at, the framework of the European Green Deal, we heard about from farm to fork, we heard about the EU biodiversity strategy, of course, the CAP, all of that in terms of the moment in history where we are now. We heard that right at the beginning, that there is a demand for these kinds of approaches from the public. There is, so much more knowledge and need, certainly there. And then I go back right at the start of that brilliant first video where we heard in Flanders, well, this was started by a group of farmers, who had this real desire to make their working practices and their farming climate proof. So that coalition, plus of course the researchers and scientists who have also featured here, is those important partners in that ecosystem, but farmers absolutely have to be in it, and it's got to be that balance of incentives. So lots of carrot, please, and also praise for what has been done thus far. That's what I heard. Now, I know we're not in Hollywood. I'm saying that's a wrap, but it has been an epic event. Thank you so much. We've got most of you still saying with us right to the end. Can I thank again our wonderful speakers, delightful speakers, and of course, everyone in the project who didn't feature here either live or in video. Can I thank the Commission for its support and AC3A for driving the organisation of this event content-wise, and also for taking care of the technical aspects behind the scenes. So really keeping the lights on and all of us at home, with particular thanks to Sarah, Christine, Maëlle, and the lovely also Alexandre Morin, who has been filtering the questions. You've been so diligent. Let me say that, ladies and gentlemen, these are not easy things to do. Thanks also to our brilliant interpreters, very, very hardworking, and thanks to you for joining us on our journey today. You can't possibly leave this event less informed than you were at the outset, so do share what you've heard with 1 or 2 people over the weekend. I love doing that. People get excited. You never know where it might lead. Don't forget, you're going to get all the videos on the platform, but look at the website, because there's all sorts of masterclasses, all sorts of training, all of that is going on, national level too. So really go to that website. The link should be in the public chat, but it's not difficult to find online. And if you're a real fetishist as well of Facebook, you can follow the project there. And if you're a Twitter, hashtag Fabulous Farmers or hashtag EU Green Week. And finally, the promised gift bags. There, we're going to post them in the link now, I believe. So we've got the Fabulous Farmers project that's been posted in, and here you go. I can see it. Download your gift bags, téléchargez vos sacs cadeaux. So that's in there. It's not the Oscars. You're not going away with any Cartier watches. I've got to be honest with you about that, but it's even better. That's definitely it from me now, your moderator, Katrina Sickle. It has been a genuine pleasure to be with you. I was enthused by this event. I learned an awful lot. So thank you very much too for the organisers for asking me to navigate us all through it. I wish you a lovely Friday, nice lunch, good weekend, stay safe and have a happy summer whenever and wherever you take that break. Thank you very much.